bill is Parliament itself. It is these members of Parliament in their various committees, Mr. Speaker, who struggle with all these challenges and difficulties. It is these same senators, Mr. Speaker, that when they envision a legislative proposal, have to go through the challenges of writing to the Speaker, being told it is being cleared by the office of the Director, legislative administration. After that, Mr. Speaker, it has to go to Parliamentary Budget Office to go through the checks of Article 114, whether it is a money bill or not, then concurrence from the two speakers, a long, tedious procedure that is not provided with empirical procedures, Mr. Speaker, that a member can know from the onset to know what is it that you can include and what can't you include in a bill, Mr. Speaker, to guide you as you draft legislation, so that you avoid going through a particular legislation, then eventually you are told that this bill has fallen through the cracks and the roofs of Parliament, the rigors of it, because either it is a money bill or there was no concurrence granted from the other house, Mr. Speaker. This is our opportunity to provide it in legislation, so that when a member sits to partake their constitutional mandate of oversighting, of legislating, of representation, Mr. Speaker, it is properly guided. And I say this, and I want to repeat when the members of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee are here. Because when I said it, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, it's only the chair who's there. But today I know there are many members of Justice and Legal Affairs. I know when they sat down, Mr. Speaker, they deliberated and said, we want to kill the bill at second reading. I have spoken on that particular matter many times, Mr. Speaker, and I have said it is an abuse of legislative privilege to destroy any bill at second reading, Mr. Speaker. Because there is nowhere that you are stopped, Mr. Speaker, from receiving a bill that has 5 to 10 pages and completely removing everything that is in that particular bill and coming up with your own bill anew. If we are allowed to change, Mr. Speaker, even the heading of a bill, what can you change in a bill of Parliament, Mr. Speaker? Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge our colleagues who serve in Justice and Legal Affairs Committee to use this opportunity that we have to relook into this bill, Mr. Speaker. Listen to the views that were shared by all the members, because I listened to almost 15 members speak to this particular bill in the last 2 weeks, Mr. Speaker, on their proposals, what they think needs to be made better, what they think needs to be deleted altogether, what they think, Mr. Speaker, must feature in a proper bicameral relation between two houses of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, as is the practice established elsewhere. Because this constitution of ours, Mr. Speaker, did not fall from the sky. There are other jurisdictions where bicameral relations exist. If those countries or jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, have been able to manage this bill, to this bicameral process, Mr. Speaker, to a point where the legislative agenda works, then it can surely work in Kenya. We can define it and make it even better, because you don't have to mimic or ape any institution or jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker. We can come up with our own legislation. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is my sincere hope that Justice and Legal Affairs Committee will guide us in the right direction, that they will help us a house, Mr. Speaker, either I don't know whether it is later this week or eventually over the recess period, because I know at the end, at the rise of the House on Thursday this week, Mr. Speaker, eventually we shall proceed on a 3-week recess period. That should be sufficient time for them, such that when we resume, Mr. Speaker, we will find and be properly guided as a House and told that this is a procedure and the move that we expect, Mr. Speaker, on this particular matter. I want to request, Mr. Speaker, finally, that if there are senators, because I don't see how you can serve in this House, Mr. Speaker, and not have a say on such an important bill. And because many, maybe for one reason or the other, may not have known the importance of this bill, Mr. Speaker, then they should take the time and the trouble to write to Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and inform their views on that particular debate, on this particular bill, how it needs to move, Mr. Speaker, so that eventually when we convene to do committee of the whole, Mr. Speaker, eventually there will be good reason and good logic, Madam Speaker, on how we view things. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, and I said this the other day when I was moving this bill, that it is not for lack of jurisdiction, that the Supreme Court has urged us more than 2 or 3 times that as a House sit down and give us a bill or a guide through which we can consider this legislation, Mr. Speaker, and has granted that opportunity, appearing as if they are not even willing to give us a decision on the matters that are before them. then we will be passing on our own responsibility, something that we can sit down, Mr. Speaker, and agree on to be determined by other people. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, as a good student of history, this is a golden opportunity, which I don't want us to waste. I want us to use it, Mr. Speaker, for the betterment of this House, so that those that will serve in this House in the years to come will thank this, the Fourth Senate, Mr. Speaker, for finally resorting or restoring the dignity of this House to where it ought to have been, to see something greater than even what our constitutional drafters saw in Naivasha, Mr. Speaker, when they drafted the Senate as it is today, Mr. Speaker. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply and thank all the members that have taken time to speak to this. Thank you. Pursuant to Standing Order number 66.3, I want to request that deferment of the question be put to another day. I thank you.
It is so ordered. Clerk, you may proceed to call the next order.
Order number 10, the Meteorology Bill, Senate Bills number 45 of 2023, second reading division.
Sergeant at Arms, ring the quorum bell for 5 minutes.
It is now a 5-minute division bell currently on at the Senate before the House votes on the Meteorology Bill 2023. The debate on this bill is already concluded. The Meteorology Bill 2023 is an act of parliament that seeks to provide for the establishment of the Kenya Meteorological Service Authority regulation, coordination, monitoring, management, provision, as well as control of meteorological services, and for the connected purposes. A deeper look at the Meteorology Bill 2023 is a bill that seeks to put in place a legislative framework to regulate the meteorological services in Kenya and to coordinate as well as monitor meteorological services. The bill proposes the establishment of the Kenya Meteorological Service Authority, which shall be responsible for the provision, regulation, coordination, and management of meteorological services. This being a bill that has been debated by the House. When senators were debating this particular bill, the senators most importantly called for the establishment of meteorological departments across the 47 counties to guide Kenyans on matters to do with weather patterns, to reduce cases of Kenyans being caught unawares, such as it happened with the recent floods. Clause 1 to Clause 4 of the bill provides for the preliminary provisions and outlining the purpose as well as objective of the bill, which includes, among others, fulfilling Kenya's international obligations under the Convention of the World Meteorological Organization and the International Civil Aviation Organization. Upon the passage of this bill on matters to do with meteorology, there will be establishment of the Kenya Meteorological Service Authority that will be having functions and powers. The functions of the authority include establishment and maintenance of surface, upper air, marine meteorological observation networks, establishment as well as maintenance of the integrated informational systems for the exchange of meteorological data and products, data processing as well as archival, forecasting, product dissemination, including provision of aeronautical meteorological services for matters safety, regularity, and efficiency of the international air navigation in the line with Annex 2 and 3 to the Convention of International Civil Aviation Organization. The bill also provides for the management of the authority by a board of directors appointed under Clause 9 of this bill, and Clause 10 sets out the qualification of the person and the chairperson as well as the members of the board. Finally, the functions of the board include overseeing as well as implementation of meteorology, and sets out provisions relating to the tenure of office, vacancy of the office, meetings by the board, as well as remuneration, among others. Upon the passage of this particular bill, the bill also seeks to have the Meteorology Training Institute Research Directorate established, and this directorate shall be the successor of the Institute of Meteorological Training and Research, IMTR, and the designated World Meteorological Organization Regional Tourism Center for the provision of matters to do with diploma, certificate, and professional courses in meteorology, operational and hydrology, as well as related sciences.
Honorable Senators, the 5 minutes are completed. Majority Leader, Majority and Minority Leader, kindly take your seats. Sergeant at Arms, close the door and draw the bar. Senator Omtata, kindly take your seat. I want to proceed to put the question, please. Honorable Senators, I'll proceed to put the question, which is the Meteorology Bill, Senate Bills number 45 of 2023, be now read a second time. Now, Honorable Senators, we're going to vote electronically. I'm informed that Senator Ogola, you're voting for and on behalf of Homa Bay delegation, and Senator Mariam, you're voting for and on behalf of that's Mandera County delegation. So you may proceed to vote where you are. You don't have to be called to dispatch when the voting times comes. Now, Honorable Senators, I'm asking you to log out and pull your cards from the delegate unit. Sergeant at Arms, please pick any card that has been left unattended to, still in the delegate unit. Okay, you may now log back, Honorable Senators, kindly. Log back and proceed to vote. Honorable Senators, the results of the division are as follows. Ayes 26, nays 1, abstention 0. So the ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the establishment of the Kenya Meteorological Services Authority, regulation, coordination, monitoring, management, provision, and control of meteorological services and for connected purposes.
Now, before we call the next order, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon, visiting teachers and students from All Saints Karambari Secondary School in Embu County. The delegation is in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming guests to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I will call upon the Senator for Embu, Senator Mundigi, to extend the word of welcome under 1 minute.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa ruhusa niweze kukaribisha wanafunzi wa chuo ya Karambari na Mbarwari ambaye wamekuja kutembea kujifunza yale tunafanya hapa katika Senate. Ni kuambia karibu hapa Senate, sisi tunajifunza kusungumuza vile hii Senate nyumba ya juu inasungumuza mambo ya county government na vile pesa tukipata vile inaenda kwa county government, vile county government itafanya kazi ndio iweze kwenda masinani, mambo ya hospitali, mambo ya kilimo, mambo ya afya na mambo zingine, hata mambo ya elimu. Kwa hivyo nataka nimhakikishie mkijifunza vizuri na mkae vizuri, msikie mambo ile mnafunzwa katika shule, hata nyinyi mtakuwa viongozi wa kesho, mtakuwa maseneta, mtakuwa hata magavana, mkitii sheria ambaye inatakikana. Yangu ni machache, ni kusema karibuni sana. Hiyo ingine ningeomba pia serikali ile tunaongea hapa ni vile tungependa huko Embu County hii shule bali imetoka hakuna maji, hakuna nini, hata hakuna stima. Serikali ya Kenya Kwanza iangalie shule kama hizo ndio waweze kujifunza kama zile zingine katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Ni asante Bwana Spika. Mkienda Embu mseme mnakizwa vizuri na senator wenu wa Embu County. Asante. Asante Bwana Spika.
Next order.
Order number 11, the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 59 of 2022, second reading division.
Senator Mtata, the distribution of water has never been part of the mandate of a senator. I'll proceed to put the question, which is that the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 59 of 2022, be now read a second time. Now, we need not go through the procedure as adopted in the first division. Honorable Senators, just proceed to log in and vote. Voting is electronically. Senator Oburu, kindly proceed to the dispatch and cast your vote. Honorable Senators, the result for the division are as follows. Ayes 26, nays 1, abstention 0. So the ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend the National Construction Authority Act and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 12, the Nuts and Oil Crops Development Bill, Senate Bills number 47 of 2023, second reading division.
Honorable Senators, I'll proceed to put the question, which is that the Nuts and Oil Crops Development Bill, Senate Bills number 47 of 2022, be now read a second time. Honorable Senators, you may now proceed to vote. Order, Honorable Senators. Senator Mtata, kindly take your seat. Thank you. The results of the division are as follows. Ayes 27, nay 0, abstention 0. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the production, processing, marketing, and distribution of nuts and oil crops and their products, establish the Nuts and Oil Crops Board, provide a framework for the nuts and oil crops farming, development, and for connected purposes.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 13, the Cancer Prevention and Control Amendment Bill. National Assembly Bills number 45 of 2022, second reading division.
Honorable Senators, I will proceed to put the question, which is that the Cancer Prevention and Control Amendment Bill number 2, National Assembly Bills number 45 of 2022, be now read a second time. You may now proceed to vote. Senator Methu. Order. Honorable Senators, the results of the division are as follows. The ayes 27, the nays 0, and abstention 0. So the ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Cancer Prevention and Control Act and for connected purposes.
Sergeant at Arms, you may now proceed to withdraw the bar and open the door. Next order, clerk. We had deferred an earlier order, so we will proceed to call that order, and thereafter we will resume normal flow as contained in the order paper. That was order number 8.
Order number 8, motion. The second report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the review of the standing orders of the Senate.
Senator Wakili.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Vice Chairperson of Procedure and Rules Committee, I beg to move the motion that pursuant to Standing Order 267, 268, and 270, the Senate approves the second report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the review of the standing orders of the Senate laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 22nd of May, 2024, and that pursuant to the provisions. Mr. Speaker, can I be protected, Mr. Speaker?
Order, honorable members. May the senator be heard in silence, please.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I will recap that pursuant to the standing orders 267, 268, and 270, the Senate approves the second report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the review of the standing orders of the Senate laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 22nd of May, 2024, and that pursuant to the provisions of Article 1241 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 270 and 272, resolves 1, to resolve to amend its standing orders as contained in Annexure 1 of the report, and 2, orders that the amendments to the standing orders as contained in Annexure 1 to the report come into effect on the 25th of June 2024. Mr. Speaker, a highlight of this particular motion as I move is to indicate to the House that several requests came in through the members of this House on their proposals to amend the standing orders of this House. This was committed to the Procedure and Rules Committee, which received these proposals. And among the members who submitted proposals for amendment, Mr. Speaker, included Senator Eddie Okech, whose proposals I will in a few paragraphs comment on, Senator Miraj Abdullahi, Senator Fatuma Dulo, and those which were moved on its motion by the liaison committee on the structure of statements of members, particularly on oversight committees, which sought to introduce committee on implementation and the designation of a position of chairperson. Mr. Speaker, in its meetings of 2nd of May 2024, 9th of May 2024, the Procedure and Rules Committee considered the proposals which were made by members, particularly with the need to make sure that the request for amendments for those proposals which the committee deemed appropriate in the circumstances and came up with various recommendations. And for those which were approved, Mr. Speaker, for amendment as follows. First, Mr. Speaker, is the amendment to provisions of Standing Order number 42 of the Standing Orders of this House. And Standing Order 42, Mr. Speaker, provides for the quorum during voting in the House. And the committee, Mr. Speaker, approved that the Standing Order number 42 of the Senate as presently provides be deleted and replaced by the following. That before taking an electronic vote, roll call, division, or a voice vote, the Speaker or chairperson of the Committee of the Whole shall cause accounts to be taken of senators present in the Senate or the committee, and under 2, if the requisite quorum is present, division or voting shall be proceeded with, or B, not present, Standing Order 41(2) shall apply. That is, we will defer the vote. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, this standing order shall not apply to the process of voting on procedural motion. Mr. Speaker, what informed this particular approval of the proposed amendment is situations where we would experience in the course of seeking to vote where we have got less than 10 members in the House. And when we are going for a voice vote, it is impossible or might not be possible to clearly establish whether the ayes or the nays have had. And the committee, in the course of its consideration, was given an incident where the House had less than the numbers that would have given a clear position on the vote, and the committee indeed found merit in this particular proposal, hence the approval to amend the provisions of Standing Order 42 on the quorum during division or voting. The second approval, Mr. Speaker, that the committee made was the provisions of Standing Order number 131. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to just highlight for purposes of the members the appreciation of what Standing Order 131 provides. This is actually the requirement on pre-publication scrutiny. Mr. Speaker, whenever a committee is committed to undertake any pre-publication scrutiny, the provisions of the standing order as currently is under 131(1) requires the committee to either examine the proposal, seek reviews of the sponsor and those of the relevant cabinet secretary or any other person who is likely going to have an impact or be impacted by the pre-publication of that particular proposal or legislative proposal. And the committee under 131(1)(b) can also make suggestions for purposes of either enriching the particular legislative proposal. Mr. Speaker, as is right now, 131(1)(a) and (b) uses the conjunction or, meaning a committee is only required either to examine or to suggest variations. The committee, Mr. Speaker, approved the proposal to amend so that the committee, when it is considering a legislative proposal prior to publication, can undertake both of them. That is, it can examine the proposal, it can seek the review, and in addition to that, rather than using the conjunction or, uses and, so that the two can become the mandate with which the committee is expected to do. Mr. Speaker, the third proposal, which the committee also approved, which I also feel it's important for honorable members to appreciate, is an approval to the amendment of Standing Order 228. Previously, Mr. Speaker, the House has been invited on a number of occasions to introduce the establishment of an implementation committee. And on a number of occasions, members have invited the Speaker and the House leadership to establish that committee. However, the proposal to the amendment to the Standing Order 228 is to give the mandate to a particular standing committee that is involved in a subject matter to have a responsibility to follow up and report on the status of the committees made, of the commitments made by the committee or by any government entity, institution, or cabinet secretary in response to the questions. This, Mr. Speaker, is also going to respond and answer to the question that what happens to the recommendations the committees have made, what happens to a follow-up on the responses that the cabinet secretaries who ordinarily are now required to appear before the House to respond to the questions. The committee made an insightful proposal and approve the recommendation that instead of establishing an additional committee on implementation, the relevant committee, and for obvious reasons, Mr. Speaker, if it is about the Committee on Agriculture, they are the people who are best suited to understand the subject matter, they have interrogated the issues, and they understand beyond mere understanding of the subject, and that is why, as they follow up for implementation, they are capable of ensuring that the recommendations of that particular committee on that particular question are followed to make sure that the relevant government agency, cabinet secretary, or government institution implements the recommendations of the committee. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the Standing Order 237 of the House is also proposed to be amended by deleting that particular standing order. Standing Order 237, Mr. Speaker, allows for comments, observations, or clarifications by members of the House whenever a petition is filed and is committed to a particular committee. Previously, Mr. Speaker, there has been challenges as to whether or not a decision of a committee on a petition, a recommendation of a committee on a petition is of value to the House. And this proposal to delete the provisions of Standing Order 237 is informed by the amendments which have been approved to Standing Order 238, where against the current provision where members upon committal of a report to the committee will have no opportunity to comment. In this case, a committee report on a petition will be subjected to the debate of the House. Members will deliberate because it will be dealt with as if it is a motion rather than a report being tabled. So when we delete provisions of Standing Order 237, we propose to further amend 238 so that we now give members of the House the opportunity to comment on recommendations of a committee. And this is what the proposed Standing Order 238 will read, that whenever a petition is committed to a standing committee, the committee shall in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer, table its report to the Senate for consideration. The key word here is it will be tabled for consideration by the members. And therefore, as a matter of procedure, members now, we will not need the provisions of Standing Order 237 because it becomes superfluous by virtue of the fact that members have been allowed to deal with that report on Standing Order 238 by the issue of the report or recommendation being dealt with as a motion. And secondly, the Senate is expected under Standing Order 238B, or rather C as amended, the Senate shall consider a report under paragraph 2 within 14 sitting days of its tabling. This, Mr. Speaker, is aimed at ensuring that we do not leave out recommendations of various committees on reports to gather dust in the shelves, and that is why a timeline is provided for members to make sure that they deal with it, and a follow-up, as of course previously amended under Standing Order 228, will be followed by the relevant committee that had been committed that particular petition to deal with. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 239 is proposed to be amended. Standing Order 239 provides for copies of responses. This is responses to the petition as has been filed, and the committee is proposing that the petitioner is supposed to be notified of the decision or the recommendation of the committee, and the clerk of the Senate is mandated under the newly proposed amendments to Standing Order 239 to communicate within 14 days of the resolution of the Senate under Standing Order 238 in writing, so that the petitioner himself, herself, whether it was in person or an institution, is informed of that decision, and they will be able to follow up to ensure that if it is something that ought to be implemented, they will support the committee that is relevant to that particular issue to follow up for implementation. Mr. Speaker, there are additional other recommendations that proposals that members had made, but the committee in its wisdom considered, and some were rejected because they are already provided for by the standing orders, and the eventual effect was not to agree to the proposal for amendment. And Mr. Speaker, I wish to ask the honorable members to approve of this amendment as they contribute to them. This is aimed at enriching the debate in the House. It's aimed at ensuring that members are also involved, particularly with regard to the proposed amendment to how we deal with petitions in the House, how we deal with aspects on voting, as to make sure at any given time, prior to a decision being taken by the House, there is a confirmation that we have sufficient members in the House to undertake the vote and ensure that the vote carries as is required. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, as I ask members to look and approve on this proposal, I would wish to present this particular report, and Mr. Speaker, I move. I thank you.
Who is seconding your motion?
Ask the Honorable Senator from Nandi to second.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Senator Wakili Larry. So, Speaker, I want to second by saying it has reached a point that we now need to clean up our own standing orders, Mr. Speaker, because what guides this House, Mr. Speaker, is normally our standing orders, which in essence has originated from the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, I'm happy. I want to make 3 comments to allow my colleagues, and I can see Senator Ofiga is seeing me with excitement, Mr. Speaker, is that I want to say 2 things. One is on the issue of amending on supplementary questions. Mr. Speaker, when we amended under the new standing order on appearance of cabinet secretaries for question and answer time, Mr. Speaker, members have felt that asking only 1 supplementary question with the root of the issue that came up, Mr. Speaker, has always been a challenge. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I agree that let members ask questions, in fact, from the entire ministry. And I'm happy, for example, I can use 1 minister that came here, Governor, Cabinet Secretary Salim Vuria. We were able to ask him a written of questions, and he was able to answer comfortably without saying that question was not part of the supplementary, part of the original question. He was comfortable, Mr. Speaker. My belief, and the belief of members, Mr. Speaker, is that if you are in charge of a docket, you must have at least an overview of your docket where you are. And the retired judge, minority leader, will tell you in law school, and yourself, you know, you think on your feet. the essence of engaging, Mr. Speaker. So I want to agree that let members be allowed to ask supplementary questions. That's the essence. Even when you look at Commonwealth parliamentary system, even in Britain and many others that practice question time for prime ministers or cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker, is very important. Number two, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of removing statements, Mr. Speaker, I would have also requested, but I want to agree that I think your office, so that we don't appear brutal, is not to drop statements, but at least in consultation with the ministers, Mr. Speaker, not ministers, senators are out, Mr. Speaker. It is important that they liaise with your office. For example, Mr. Speaker, if the senator is not in the House, Mr. Speaker, is it possible to liaise with your office so that their statements, if you have given them official permission, maybe they are traveling outside the country or county visits through parliamentary visits, Mr. Speaker, is it possible to get permission from you? Then you don't have to schedule such statements. But any senator whose statements have been scheduled and they have not given you indication, then I agree with the amendment that they must seek leave. Mr. Speaker, I think in future when we amend these standing orders, in my wisdom or lack of it, Mr. Speaker, we should at least include bills and motions, Mr. Speaker, because there are bills that have stayed. And I remember there is one member, Mr. Speaker, the other day when I was moving my bill, argued that, one senator argued that, why are we prioritizing National Assembly bills? But when you look at the order paper, Mr. Speaker, the members who are supposed to move their bills and motions were not in the House. It happened coincidentally that the bill that was being moved originated from National Assembly. So I don't know, Mr. Speaker, I hope you are the chair of a committee of these procedures. Please kindly note with a lot of indulgence. Number three, Mr. Speaker, I have seen also a proposal, and I wish Senator Metu would be listening to this very keenly. Mr. Speaker, I think Senator Metu is listening because he's the chairperson of Environment and Natural Resources, where they are proposed that if you are a chairperson, you should not sit in CPAC and sipping, Mr. Speaker. I don't know, maybe in the wisdom, in the wisdom, Mr. Speaker, he's saying he's ready to forgo chairmanship to be able to still sit in the cabinet. But I can see he's consulting majority leader. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the essence is allowed to make sure, Mr. Speaker, there is efficiency and effectiveness of a committee. It is not that chairmen of various committees do not have capacity to sit in those committees, but it is because the nature of CPIC and CPAC, Mr. Speaker, is that we sit daily from Monday to Friday. And Mr. Speaker, you are aware we have backlogs of audit queries of many years. Even we are not updated in 2023, 2024, Mr. Speaker. So on this one, I know majority and minority leaders have consulted on this extensively. Mr. Speaker, number three, Mr. Speaker, on my contribution is the use of subcommittees. I want to inform this House, and Senator Otsosi will be in agreement with me, and also Senate's County Public Accounts Committee, Mr. Speaker, we have agreed that to ensure we come with the latest and clear backlog of audit queries in counties, Mr. Speaker, as we go for this working recess, we shall form the subcommittees, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on dormant committees, so that I allow colleagues also to make because this is a procedural matter, is on the inactive members of the committees and dormant members, Mr. Speaker. I think majority and minority need to guide us, Mr. Speaker, on how we can handle this issue. And I agree, Mr. Speaker, in the ruling in the last session on David Ochieng, the MP of Ugenya, at that time the national NASA, was it called NASA? I think NASA coalition wanted to de-whip him. And his argument in the ruling of Justin Biden Muturi, the current AG, ruled that in an upshot of his ruling, Mr. Speaker, when David Ochieng was being de-whipped, and I know Senator Otsosi was in that session, the speaker then, Justin Bundi Muturi, ruled that at least every member of parliament, either a senator or member of National Assembly, must be at least in one committee. So with this insight, I think also we should propose, and I know Senator Metu will support this, we should propose that if you are a member of PIC or PAC, you should only be in one committee. You should not be any other committee, so that you are able to channel your energies where it should be, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the upshot, and I think finally on implementation, I agree that let committees follow up on the resolutions. There is always a matrix on how they can implement, Mr. Speaker. I know we have argued, even in the last session, Mr. Speaker, even at the beginning of this session, we have always, let's have an implementation committee to follow on recommendation. But when we ask and we have been consulting, we thought if it is PIC, Senate CPIC, who should, or CPAC, or Agriculture Committee to follow up on resolutions, Mr. Speaker, then I think we need to agree on how the implementation committee, Mr. Speaker. And I agree that on this implementation committee, we must agree as a House and allow these resolutions, Mr. Speaker, to be done by individual committees. The reporting mechanism, Mr. Speaker, I don't know, because I know you chair this committee, is to look at the reporting mechanisms. Because, for example, if today we say Kakamega County, Mr. Speaker, we say Kakamega County, for example, PAC, Senate Public Accounts Committee, where his governor appeared last week, recommends that EACC follows up on a matter. So how do we ensure, Mr. Speaker, that EACC has implemented the directions of the committee? So I think those are issues I want to throw to members to agree with, Mr. Speaker, because how do we ensure reporting mechanism? How can committee know, Mr. Speaker, that in our recommendations or directions has it been adhered to? So we need to ensure that there is reporting mechanism, Mr. Speaker. And I want, Mr. Speaker, on liaison, I agree that there should be a vice chair so that it is easy, especially you and Deputy Speaker, to allow you to efficiently, among the chairpersons of the liaison, they sit, Mr. Speaker, but in future also we should consider as the vice chairpersons also to have our own liaison committee, Mr. Speaker, and I'll propose to be the chair of the vice chairpersons of the committees, Mr. Speaker. But the upshot of this cleanup or recommendations is very beautiful, Mr. Speaker. We need to agree and move forward. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, allow me, and I beg to second this report or the motion that has been tabled by the committee. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Manzo. Honorable Senators, I will now proceed to propose the question, which is that pursuant to Standing Orders 267, 268, 270, the Senate approved the second report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the review of the Standing Orders of the Senate laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 22nd May 2024, and that pursuant to the provisions of Article 124(1) of the Constitution and Standing Orders 270 and 272, resolves to amend its standing orders as contained in Annex 1 of the report, and 2, orders that the amendments to the standing orders as contained in Annex 1 to the report come into effect on the 25th of June 2024. Honorable Manzo, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under Article 124 of the Constitution, the House or each House of Parliament is mandated to establish committees and make standing orders for the orderly conduct of the proceedings, including the proceedings of the committees. Mr. Speaker, the standing orders apply for the House and at the same time apply for the business which goes on in the committees, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the standing orders are like a law, just like an act of Parliament. And, Mr. Speaker, the standing orders also are not cast on stone, and therefore can be amended from time to time, just like it has been proposed this time. Under Standing Order 237, Mr. Speaker, when petitions are presented, there has been a practice of comments, and then at the same time, a report will be presented and the comments will still ensue. Although, Mr. Speaker, the main idea of brief comments on petitions was to guide the House or to give a general view to the committee, Mr. Speaker, it has ended up in consuming a lot of time for the House, and a lot of times will go up to 4 p.m. or 4:30 before we go into the main business, which are the bills. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the committee that this saves time of the House, and therefore the House will utilize that time to do more business, and especially legislative. Although it had its own place before it was reviewed, Mr. Speaker, that would be very useful into a committee. But again, how useful, Mr. Speaker? Sometimes those comments may not even, end up constituting the main part of the report, as the committee will still have to do its work. So I think, Mr. Speaker, the moves by the committee have been very positive, and it's to make this House efficient, make this House serve devolution and Kenyans much better. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Chiranke, so why do you want to speak against Senator, and you are the one who seconded this particular motion? Senator Mungatana.
Thank you, Mr.
A
Speaker.
deliberate error, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, I have looked at the proposals on the amendments on the procedure to present petitions in the House. And Mr. Speaker, I know that the chairman of JLAC has spoken on many other amendments, but I particularly want to mention this proposed amendment. Because, Mr. Speaker, the current procedure now, where the committee receives a petition, and you know, Mr. Speaker, a petition is not like a normal thing. It's not a normal thing that comes before this House. A petition normally, Mr. Speaker, originates from citizens who have failed to get their justice. And it always says the matter is not in court. And they say that they have tried to do this and the other and it has not succeeded. So a petition is like a special way to approach the Senate. Mr. Speaker, the current procedure where if the petition has been negatived by the committee, the standing committee where it has been referred to, the report just merely tables that it's negatived and there is no debate. So the matter ends there. That procedure, Mr. Speaker, is really lacking. I particularly like this amendment that says whatever the committee finds and the committee files that report comes to the House as a motion. Mr. Speaker, I think that was a beautiful, a very superior amendment to how to deal with petitions. Why so, Mr. Speaker? Because when the amendment now comes before the House as a motion, we have the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to debate it. And the citizens who have listened to, who have presented this petition before the House are able to hear the arguments for and against whatever their petition is, so that, Mr. Speaker, the matter is prosecuted with severity and the weight in which the people who have presented the petition have approached it. Mr. Speaker, petitions on land matters, for example, you hear people, the committee has negatived that petition. The person who presented the petition may have presented it as a person, but it is affecting hundreds or even thousands of people who would want to listen to what happened. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the procedure that forces now whatever the petitioner, the committees have found out, to be brought to the House for debate as a motion, I think it's a very beautiful amendment that needs to be supported. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the chair of the JLAC for that particular amendment on petitions. And, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you.
Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also make my comments on the motion on proposed amendments to the standing orders of Senate. Mr. Speaker, the standing order number 267 provides that the committee procedure and rules may at any time propose amendments to the standing orders. Mr. Speaker, this was important because we are living in a changing world, changing scenarios, and we may have a situation where it is important for us to change our standing orders so that they are aligned to the current realities that we are facing as a House. Mr. Speaker, I fully support the amendment so that this House has an opportunity to debate and make resolutions on petitions. Because, Mr. Speaker, petition is a very important tool, a legislative tool, and the practice in this House has been that once a petition is committed to a committee, and the committee makes a report, and it tables the report, it ends there. Mr. Speaker, this amendment will allow this House to have an opportunity to debate the report of the committee and approve the resolutions that are proposed by the committee. Mr. Speaker, this is important because some petitions contain very weighty matters, and it is important that those weighty matters are made as a House collectively. Mr. Speaker, there is also the issue of ascertaining the presence of quorum before a voice vote is taken. Mr. Speaker, I've seen on many occasions in this House when sometimes we don't have quorum and a voice vote is put and a matter before us is passed by this House. I think this amendment will allow this House not to get to a risky situation where someone who is very keen can take this Senate to court when we pass a law without sufficient quorum before us. So this will help us in this regard so that we are able to avoid scenarios where we can be taken to court. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the implementation committee, I think I hold a contrary view. I have read the report by the committee, and I am not convinced by the reasons stated by the committee on the need to have the implementation committee. Because they have cited budgetary reasons, they have cited that the parent committee can do that. But, Mr. Speaker, there are so many issues that arise in this House which are not necessarily issues before the committee. For example, when cabinet secretaries appear before us and they make undertakings to this committee, who is supposed to follow up on that? So, Mr. Speaker, I think that this issue of having an implementation committee is a very justifiable issue and is an issue that maybe we need a rethink. The committee on House procedure and rules needs to relook at this matter. Because even if you look at the other jurisdiction, the implementation committee is very critical. The House of Representatives in equivalent countries, Commonwealth countries like Nigeria, has an implementation committee. In India, the Committee on Government Assurances handles all resolutions of the House on a day-to-day basis. Mr. Speaker, even here in Uganda, they have a Committee on Government Assurances. In Ghana, Parliament of Ghana, the same. So I think it's important for us to relook at this matter, because I know for sure, Mr. Speaker, most of these committees that we have here, they handle current matters. They don't go back and start looking at what was proposed and has not been implemented. So we need to have a committee that sits in there that handles all resolutions, all undertakings that have been made to this House, and all the assurances that have been made to this House. In the last, I served in the National Assembly, 12th Parliament, and I was the Vice Chair of the Implementation Committee. And Mr. Speaker, I noticed that Implementation Committee performs another role above the issue of following up on recommendation or resolutions of the House. It also performs, it's an appeal mechanism for the House, where a committee makes resolutions, someone goes to court as a result of those resolutions, and or comes to the House with a new petition questioning the resolution of the House, then that is taken to the Implementation Committee to provide appeal mechanism, so that we have an internal appeal mechanism, so that we don't provide an opportunity for people to go to court on every issue. So, Mr. Speaker, if we really want to enhance parliamentary powers in this country, supremacy of parliament, I think we must have a proper mechanism of how we are going to ensure that whatever we pass in our houses is going to be implemented. Mr. Speaker, most of the things we pass in this House and the other House are never implemented. A case in point, Mr. Speaker, this House passed a resolution on the issue of pensions, non-remitted pension by county governments, estimated to be 80 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, I was surprised this week that the Attorney General, who was directed by this House to gazette a task force to implement that, went ahead, instead of gazetting the task force, he went ahead and he wrote to the committee questioning the resolution of the committee. These are the challenges that we are facing, Mr. Speaker. So if we have a substantive committee that exists, whose role is only to follow up on the resolution of the House, we'll make progress. Mr. Speaker, it is also important that we have administrative mechanisms within Parliament to follow up on the implementation of a resolution, so that once this House passes a resolution, we must have a unit within Parliamentary Service Commission whose role, just like the Budget Office, whose role is to manage the resolutions that are made in this House. Other parliaments, Mr. Speaker, they have what we call the Monitoring and Evaluation Unit that does that. In this Parliament, we don't have. And yet, that is the most important unit that this Parliament should have. A special unit whose role is to administratively deal with the resolutions that are passed by this House, with undertakings that are made before this House, and reports back to this House. Maybe in that case, Mr. Speaker, we may not need an implementation committee. But a scenario where we have no administrative unit to handle that, and then we don't have an implementation committee, Mr. Speaker, many of the things that we pass in this House will be in vain. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of oversight committees, where they proposed, where there was a request to enhance the numbers of these committees so that they are able to fast-track their work and be able to be current in terms of how they engage with the counties. Mr. Speaker, I fully support that proposal, although the committee rejected that proposal on budgetary reasons. Mr. Speaker, the committee of CPIC had 11 members, just 2 more members than other committees. And the reason was that they can have flexibility to establish subcommittees and do parallel meetings and be able to catch up. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to revisit that issue so that we help oversight committees be able to be current. And I want to say that even though we have 9 members, the committee of CPIC and CPAC, we will be the first committees which are going to start questioning the governors who are in office now on their reports. With effect from August, we will now start dealing with the 2022-2023 finance year, so that by the time we finish our 5 years, we will have at least done up to the year 2025-2026. Mr. Speaker, this is important because we are having a problem questioning a governor on the financial statements of another governor who has already left office. It becomes very difficult. So the only solution here is to fast track the work, the reports before us, so that before one leaves the office, Mr. Speaker, we have cleared with his reports and he can go in peace. And Mr. Speaker, I have also seen a proposal, amendment to the Constitution by Senator Chimera, that governors should not run as senators. I think that, to me, although the bill is not before us here for debate, to me, it is something we need to look at, but it is something that arises because we are not able to do our work. If we did our work and ensured the reports are done, and those who have questions, maybe we can have a mechanism of vetting so that they cannot be allowed to contest for seats. But those who are cleared by this House, they should be allowed to contest any seat. Mr. Speaker, I don't see any problem with a governor becoming a senator if he has been cleared by this House, or a senator becoming a governor, like my friend Boni Halwale here, who is going to become the governor. So, Mr. Speaker, it is the issue of the speeding up the processing of the oversight committee report is very important, and the answers lie in expanding the members slightly so that they can have subcommittees, and also having members who are committed. There was a proposal that you should not belong to another committee. Mr. Speaker, they can belong to other committees, but they need to be committed. They need to be there to read volumes and volumes of documents. If we have members of this committee who are not committed, then we will not be able to catch up. Mr. Speaker, I don't mean that my members are not committed. My members in PIC are very committed, and that is why we have done so many reports. Still on the Oversight Committee, the issue of budgets. Mr. Speaker, it is not fair that CPIC and CPAC have the same budget as other committees. These are committees that deal with so many reports, and reports that require a lot of input, a lot of study, and therefore they need to have adequate resources, budgetary resources, to do the reports. I have run out of my budget as a committee, and therefore I can't process any more reports. So if we have the same budget, and considering that budgets have been slashed, it becomes very easy, Mr. Speaker, to achieve our objective. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of parliamentary party, the request to amend the standing orders to define a parliamentary party, I want to agree with the committee on their final decision that a parliamentary party can have 5 members, but that parliamentary party should not belong to a coalition. Mr. Speaker, I think this request was made in view of the Jubilee Party. Jubilee Party, yes, they have a right to get out of Azimio coalition, but they must do that within the law, because the documents that are there indicate that Jubilee is still legally a member of the Azimio coalition until they exhaust all the legal mechanisms, including the court process, so that they can become independent from Azimio. So the amendment is fair to both parties, because the amendment is saying that they can become a parliamentary party, but they should not belong to a coalition, which is fair, unlike the request that was made, which said that a party can have 5 members and becomes a parliamentary party. Mr. Speaker, we also need to discuss what are the privileges of parliamentary parties, because in the National Assembly I've seen that there is a party of 17 members which has been allowed to appoint a whip alongside the minority whip. Mr. Speaker, if we allow these kind of things, we'll be creating confusion in our houses because there can only be two leadership sides, the minority and majority side. If the minority side has a minority whip, the other side should have a majority whip. We do not want a scenario where we have another layer in between. It creates confusion, and Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the committee for being wise and making a recommendation that parliamentary parties must not be members of, they must first of all meet the criteria of 5 members and should not belong to a coalition of parties. On the issue of statements, the format of statements, Mr. Speaker, I think I support the request that was made that a statement must have a background. The statements we do in this House, Mr. Speaker, do not have a background, and sometimes when they are sent to the people who are supposed to respond, they end up not responding adequately or capturing the basis of the statement because the background is not there or is not inadequate, is not adequate. So I think it's important for the background to be there, stating the facts of the case, and then the questions or the issues that need to be undertaken are stated after that. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important for us to continually improve on our standing orders, to make them better, and to line them to the realities of our parliament. So for those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to support these amendments that have been proposed and request that we need to have a rethink on this issue of implementation. How do we want to do it? Not just in this House, even administratively, within our system of Parliamentary Service Commission. How do we deal with the issue of implementing the resolution of the House? And the resolution of the House are quite diverse, including the budgetary resolutions that we pass in this House. Mr. Speaker, including undertakings that are made in this House, even undertakings that are made to committees. How will they be followed up? That is very important. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move an amendment to the motion that is before the House. Mr. Speaker, in paragraph 1, by inserting the following words immediately after the word report, subject to deletion of the word not in a coalition with another party, appearing in the proposed amendment to Standing Orders number 2 on page 33 of the report. Mr. Speaker, I am actually requesting to amend this so that political parties can have a freedom of being on their own and also being within the coalition. And I think this is a freedom that we seek. And this will actually help in sorting out the challenges, Mr. Speaker, we face within the coalition. And I think this will also give association by political parties within different parties. And again, Mr. Speaker, even within a coalition, if you are 5 members, you can be able, Mr. Speaker, to belong to a political party. And I think that will help a lot. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would request Senator Kakamega to second. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the amendment. And Mr. Speaker, listening very carefully to the spirit in this letter of the amendment, it is attempting to write something that standing orders are not explicit on. Namely, once you walk through this door, stand there and you are sworn in as a senator, you must be able to enjoy all the committees in this house. You must be able to enjoy all the privileges that are extended to members for purposes of making their work easier. And therefore, since this amendment is curing exactly that, I support it strongly. Mr. Speaker, we now have an opportunity whereby reports of committees with very strong recommendations lie on the shelves with not too much that we can move concerning our counties. Statements from members are worked on by committees. Recommendations are made, but no action is taken. Mr. Speaker, with this amendment, both the first one and the second one, whereby we are now introducing the implementation committee, it means that those reports of committees will have a chance to be acted upon by the Committee on Implementation. I support this amendment, Mr. Speaker, sir. I second.
Honorable Senators, I'll now proceed to propose the question, which is that the motion, Senator Wakili, you should know better, that the motion be amended in paragraph 1 by inserting the following words immediately after the word report, subject to deletion of the words not in a coalition with another party, appearing in the proposed amendment to Standing Order number 2 on page 33 of the report. Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia ripoti ya kamati ya taratibu za bunge kuhusiana na mabadiliko ya kanuni za bunge. Mheshimiwa Spika, ningependa kusema kwamba ripoti imezungumzia kwa ufasaha mambo kadhaa, lakini mimi nitagusia mambo mawili peke yake. Kwanza ni kwamba
Senator Faki, we are now debating the amendments, the motion on the amendments as proposed by Senator Dulo. Senator Majority Leader, the motion on the floor is the motion of amendment. That is the motion that we are supposed to debate.
No, Chair,
we finalize on that matter and then we can resume debate on the original motion in whatever form, depending on the outcome of this particular vote. So what is before us now is the motion as proposed by Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Chair. I had no intention of supporting or debating the amendment.
No, honorable senators, I see no senator wishing to, Senator Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, I listened to the Honorable Senator Dulo when she was moving this amendment, and I listened very carefully, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the sentiments that every senator who walks into this House and takes that oath is entitled to participate fully in the activities of this House. Mr. Speaker, irrespective of the external politics, the party politics, every senator who walks into this House, Mr. Speaker, especially those ones who are elected by delegation, they should participate in committees, Mr. Speaker. They should make their contribution, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this amendment is helping us towards achieving that particular goal. And this is what we want. We should not have rules that are limiting participation of elected senators, Mr. Speaker, people who have come here by the voice and the vote of the people. Mr. Speaker, irrespective of whatever politics that are happening outside, this amendment is giving that power to allow full participation of members in various committees. And Mr. Speaker, this is a beautiful amendment. It's a kind of amendment that helps us to go forward rather than backward. It's a kind of amendment that is opening doors for us to, as a House, benefit from the wisdom of those colleagues who are elected, and for whatever reason, they could be having issues with their arrangements of politics outside the House. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise to fully support that amendment and ask all members to support. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Prof. Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support the amendment that has been introduced by Senator Dulo for the one reason that in democratic parliaments, there should be allowance for people to make decisions and to make moves of their own choice. Mr. Speaker, it becomes very difficult when we lock the system through our own standing orders and forbid members who may wish not to be aligned to any political party or any political coalition. I therefore support that it is good for us within the House to know that once we are in the House, there is, for democracy to prevail, we should allow members to exercise their duty and right of association within the House itself. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to support that this amendment be included so that we allow for that room. It may be today that those of us who are in Jubilee have found ourselves in an awkward situation, but it could be another group tomorrow. So for the House, it is very important that the House has that flexibility, that the House allows for that democratic movement so that coalitions can be brought in and out in a very democratic manner. For that, I support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Rober.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support Senator Dulo's amendment, proposed amendment. Mr. Speaker, it is also in that same spirit to make sure that no senator is brought to chambers, either special elected or elected through the ballot, and made redundant, that they cannot participate in certain activities because maybe of their political affiliations, especially now that we have all these alliances. But, Mr. Speaker, it's in the same spirit that, and I think maybe the train left the station for me. I don't know why I did not bring also an amendment, because it is in that same spirit, Mr. Speaker, that I think also the specially elected senators who have been elected to represent women, working groups, people with disabilities, Mr. Speaker, they should be allowed to participate in all possible activities, Mr. Speaker, including voting, Mr. Speaker. As you know, the specially elected senators, because of our standing orders, as we fall on a delegation, it is only the elected chair of the delegation who gets to vote on certain issues. But, Mr. Speaker, I think on matters concerning, let's say, working groups or women or even people with disability, Mr. Speaker, there should be a way that we are progressive enough to say that at that point then all the nominated senators who are nominated under, let's say, the special interest group of gender should be able to cast a vote, or people with disability, or even the working groups. Because, Speaker, I think even most senators don't know that there are senators who have been specially elected to represent working groups, Mr. Speaker, and they sit in chambers, but they do not have a vote, Mr. Speaker. As a matter of fact, in this spirit of supporting Senator Dulo's amendment, such that alliances and coalitions are not put out in terms of participation in committees, Mr. Speaker, there needs to be a conversation, either through Kamkunji or otherwise, on the nominated senators like us, what is really our actual duty, because sometimes it appears that we are redundant, and it appears that we have been sworn in to come and just be body count here, Mr. Speaker. So as I've said, the train has left the station, and I do not know why I did not bring my amendment, but Mr. Speaker, I thought I should voice this out so that as we support Senator Dulo in her Jubilee affairs, she should also remember that when we bring as nominated senators representing women or special interest groups, she should remember as an elected senator that we have supported her in this one, and she should support us when we are fighting for our rights on the Senate oversight, and as well as support us when we are fighting for our rights on voting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chiranke.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the amendment by Senator Dulo. I think this amendment originates from the spirit, the letter, and the principle of Constitutional 2010. Mr. Speaker, no Kenyan, be it elected or not elected, should be denied the sacrosanct right to associate with anybody, Mr. Speaker. I think the era of Kipande system that happened during pre- and colonial time should not be allowed. Article 38 on political rights, everybody has a right to associate, not only at the given specific timeline, but within even a short time, Mr. Speaker. We know the politics of the country and parties change even within a week, within a year, within 5 years, 2 years, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is it that same spirit that every member of this House, and you know we are the House of Union, Mr. Speaker, today I was having a conversation with some of the working groups in this country, and they was telling me the credibility of the Senate as the upper house of Parliament of the Republic of Kenya is in high all time, Mr. Speaker. And therefore I want to support Senator Dulo with this amendment that they should be allowed to individually, any member of the Senate, whether you are elected through Azimio, through Kenya Kwanza, through Jubilee, you have a right, Mr. Speaker, to be part of the participation, Mr. Speaker. Even the deputy party leader of Democratic People's Party, Dr. Alex Munyi Mundigi, Mr. Speaker, should be given the right of freedom of association and political rights as envisaged in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So the upshot of this amendment will allow the ease of running even committees, Mr. Speaker. Because at the end of the day, no senator, Mr. Speaker, with the freedom of association, political rights, and in the spirit of Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya, no senator should feel lesser simply because they come from either minority or majority. Every member of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, and I hope the nominated specially elected senators are listening to this, including Professor Kamar, should feel that they are part of the decision makings of the committees and plenary sessions in this House, Mr. Speaker. I have heard what Senator Orwaba has said on the decisions of the Senate as per Article 123. Mr. Speaker, I'm bringing a constitutional amendment bill. I hope Senator Orwaba, when I bring that amendment, should include, because I propose under Article 123 of the Constitution to amend, Mr. Speaker, so that the decisions of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, can you protect me from Senator Metu who is moving my notes to distract me, Mr. Speaker, but tunasema ashindwe. Mr. Speaker, what we are saying in short, in an upshot, is these decisions can be made, Mr. Speaker. With those very, very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support and allow this, we move to other agenda of the day, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Now, honorable senators, there being no other senator wishing to contribute on the proposed amendments, and pursuant to Standing Order 97 1(2)(c), where the mover has no right to reply, I will proceed to straight away put the question, which is that the motion be amended in paragraph 1 by inserting the following words immediately after the words report. subject to deletion of the words "not in a coalition with another party" appearing in the proposed amendments to Standing Order number 2 on page 33 of the report. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it. Now, honorable senators, I will have now to again propose the question as amended, so that debate will ensue on the motion in the amended form. So I will now proceed to put the question as amended. That pursuant to Standing Orders 267, 268, and 270, the Senate approves the second report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the review of the Standing Orders of the Senate, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 22nd May 2024, and that pursuant to the provisions of Article 124(1) of the Constitution and the Standing Orders 270 and 272. 1. Resolve to amend its standing orders as contained in Annex 1 of the report, subject to deletion of the words "not in a coalition with another party" appearing in the proposed amendment to the Standing Order number 2 on page 33 of the report. And second, orders that the amendments to the standing orders as contained in Annex 1 to the report come into effect on the 25th of June 2024. Honorable Senators, you may proceed to debate the motion as amended. There being no senator wishing to make an intervention, honorable senators, I will now proceed to put the question, which is that pursuant to Standing Orders 267, 268, and 270, and the Senate approved the report, the second report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the review of the Standing Orders of the Senate, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 22nd May 2024, and that pursuant to the provisions of Article 2 of Article 124, 1 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 270 and 272, 1, resolves to amend its standing orders as contained in Annex 1 of the report, subject to deletion of the words "not in a coalition with another party" appearing in the proposed amendment to Standing Order number 2 on page 33 of the report. And second, orders that the amendments to the standing orders as contained in Annex 1 to the report come into effect on the 25th of June 2024. Will as many as of this opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order. Now, honorable senators, before I call the next order, I will allow Senator Gloria Oroba to make her statement pursuant to Standing Order 52.1, today being the World Menstrual Hygiene Day. Senator Oroba, you may proceed.
Thank you, Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make a general statement on this day of International Menstrual Hygiene Day, May 28th. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 52.1 to make a statement on a matter of general topical concern, namely the commemoration of World Menstrual Hygiene Day, observed annually on the 28th of May. Mr. Speaker, today is World Menstrual Hygiene Day, and this year's theme is Together for a Period-Friendly World. The global platform of raising awareness about the challenges of women and girls facing regarding menstrual hygiene and advocating for the necessary changes to ensure their dignity, health, and well-being are well catered for. Mr. Speaker, in Kenya, many girls face significant barriers in managing their menstrual health. Lack of access to affordable sanitary products, inadequate sanitation facilities in schools, and pervasive cultural taboos lead to high rates of absenteeism in schools, school dropouts, and compromised dignity. According to recent studies, nearly 1 in 10 African girls miss school during menstruation, with some dropping out entirely due to the challenges they face. Mr. Speaker, on this Menstrual Hygiene Day 2024, we celebrate the strides made by the Kenyan government in ensuring that every girl in Kenya has access to menstrual hygiene products. The State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action received 876,548,482 shillings in the supplementary estimates, only in the supplementary estimates towards the supply of sanitary towels to schoolgirls in all public primary and junior secondary schools in Kenya in this financial year 2023-2024. Mr. Speaker, it should be noted that that budget has gone up from 265 million after the Kenya Kwanza government put in the intervention to ensure that we are ending period poverty. Mr. Speaker, the procurement process is complete with contracts signed. It is also clear to the suppliers that the delivery points will be at the sub-county level, and each supplier, upon pre-inspection exercise and clearance, is expected to share the distribution schedule for seamless delivery to the counties up to the sub-county level. So far, 27 counties have been supplied with sanitary towels, while the remaining 20 are either awaiting the scheduled delivery dates or ongoing pre-inspection or communication has been done by the supplier for the late delivery. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to emphasize that these sanitary towels are being distributed as we speak by our county women reps, Mr. Speaker, and I want to applaud the efforts of our Cabinet Secretary for Gender, Madam Aisha Jumwa, who has made sure that she has seen this exercise to fruition, Mr. Speaker. There have been a lot of queries in terms of the checks and balances and accountability of the same, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the same is being raised even in the Senate in terms of ensuring that the over 800 million Kenya shillings was spent and the beneficiaries are indeed the vulnerable girls and women in the society, Mr. Speaker. I want to congratulate the Kenya Kwanza government, Mr. Speaker, on this particular initiative and being on the forefront heading the menstrual hygiene campaign, Mr. Speaker, to end period poverty and end period shaming. On this day, I would like to applaud each and every champion that is out there, including our male senators and male champions, Mr. Speaker, who have been out there ensuring that we end the stigma. Mr. Speaker, to you and to all the members of the House, I say Happy Menstrual Hygiene Day 2024. Thank you.
Before you call the Next order, allow me to make this communication, honorable senators. As you may recall, at the sitting of the Senate held on Tuesday, 14th of May 2024, the Senator for Nandi County, Senator Samson Cherankei, made utterances while contributing to a petition to the Senate by Mr. Japheth Makoha, seeking an amendment to Section 32(3) of the County Governments Act. The Senator for Siaya County, Senator Dr. Oburu Oginga, MP, rose on a point of order pursuant to Standing Order 105(1), seeking the intervention of the Speaker to require the Senator for Nandi to substantiate the utterances. The statement that Senator Dr. Oburu Oginga, MP, requires substantiation from Senator Samson Cherankei, MP, was as follows. For example, we have seen governors frustrate the deputy governors. For example, we have seen that the deputy governor for Siaya County cannot access his office. He does not have a vehicle, fuel, or any resources allocated. In the opinion of Senator Dr. Oburu Oginga, MP, the statement made by Senator Samson Cherankei, MP, was a wild allegation that needed to be substantiated. I then directed Senator Samson Cherankei, MP, to substantiate the above allegations as required pursuant to Standing Order 105(1). In line with Standing Order 105(2), Senator Samson Cherankei, MP, requested to table the documents in support of the statement at the next sitting. At the sitting of the Senate held on Wednesday, 15th of May 2024, I invited Senator Samson Cherankei, MP, to forthwith substantiate the claims as raised in the point of order by Senator Dr. Oburu Oginga, MP. Thereupon, Senator Cherankei, MP, tabled a letter dated the 6th of May 2024 from the Deputy Governor for Siaya County, Honorable Dr. William Oduol, addressed to the Speaker of the Senate. In the letter, the Deputy Governor for Siaya County sought the intervention of the Senate concerning alleged refusal by the Governor to accept the Deputy Governor back to the county, despite the Senate's verdict on his proposed removal by impeachment. Now, Honorable Senators, as you may recall, in my communication to the Senate made on the 1st and the 16th of November 2023, I indicated that any document, evidence tabled by a senator as evidence for substantiation of any allegations made under Standing Order 105 must pass a certain threshold. I highlighted the parameters for undertaking an assessment of evidence tabled to include: 1, is the evidence tabled from a source which by parliamentary practice is official and admissible, and 2, if the answer to A is in the affirmative, does the evidence relate to and verify the claim or claims that are made and for which substantiation was required. The requirement by the Speaker in this matter was to review the document tabled by Senator Cherankei, MP, establish the connection with the utterances made by the Senator, and to finally make a determination on whether the evidence was admissible or not. Now, Honorable Senators, a reading of the contents of the letter by the Deputy Governor at pages 3 and 4 state that he has been excluded from the Siaya County Executive Committee meetings. His utility car and security officers have been withdrawn. Fuel provision for his official car had been stopped, and that attempt to resolve the matter with the relevant authorities within the county government proved futile. That being the case, and having examined the contents of the letter by the Deputy Governor and tabled by Senator Cherankei, MP, I make a determination that the contents thereof have met the established threshold. Consequently, the letter tabled is admissible as evidence in the Senate and serves to fully substantiate the claims made by the Senator. I thank you. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 45-2, I seek to rearrange today's order paper. We will proceed to order number 21 before resuming the normal flow as contained in today's order paper.
Order number 21, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 40 of 2023, second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I only need few minutes, Mr. Speaker, for my amendment bill. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to provision of Standing Order 146(1) of the Senate Standing Orders, orders that the Public Finance Amendment Bill to be now read. Yeah, second time. Mr. Speaker, the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations has prepared amendments to the bill which incorporates the views of the public. Mr. Speaker, is it the one?
Proceed, Senator. Proceed to move.
So, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move Public Finance Bill Public Finance Bill on the amendment of Bill 2023, Senate Bills number 34 of 2023. Mr. Speaker, according to the Standing Order 145(5) of the Senate, the committee invited interested members of the public and stakeholders to submit their proposal on the bill. Mr. Speaker, the principal object of this bill is to amend the Public Finance Management Act number 18 of 2012 to establish a collaborative framework for collection of revenues by the county governments and the National Treasury. This will boost revenue collection by the county governments and ensure counties realize their revenue targets. Mr. Speaker, this bill speaks to the collection of the county government's revenue, at least to the county governments to establish and have their own source revenue. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I shall proceed to highlight the various provincials in this bill. Clause 2 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, the proposed new section requires the county treasury in consultation with the National Treasury to put in place a county revenue collection system. It requires that such a system that respects the distinctiveness of the two levels of government be secure, effective, efficient, and transparent. Mr. Speaker, Clause 3 of the bill seeks to amend the Public Finance Management Act by inserting new section 160A, 160B, and 160C. The proposed new section 160A intends to provide framework for collaboration between the county governments and the National Treasury as regards to the collection of revenue by counties. Mr. Speaker, the proposed new section 160B, on the other hand, provides for reporting on the status of revenue collection at the county. It requires county treasury to report to the county assembly and submit copies of the reports to the Senate, the National Treasury, and the Commission of Revenue Allocation on the status of the county revenue collection and performance. Mr. Speaker, the proposed new section 160C provides for the transfer of functions between the levels of the government and also how such functions shall be funded. It requires county assemblies to appropriate monies as may be required for the transferred functions. That amount shall not less than the shall not be less than the amount appropriated by the County Assembly in the preceding financial year. Such monies shall be audited by Auditor General, who shall prepare a special audit report on the performance of the entity to which a county government functions has been transferred to. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move. And I call upon Finance. I call upon Senator Faki to support, since he's in the, to second, sorry, since he's in the Finance Committee.
Senator Mohamed Faki.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to second the bill by Senator Hamida. Honorable Speaker, the bill is very important because it provides a further framework for our county governments in terms of revenue collection in their respective jurisdictions. Honorable Speaker, on-source revenue has been a thorny issue in our counties. Most counties overstate their on-source revenue, thereby developing pending bills at the end of the financial year because the amounts collected are not enough to cater for the projects that they had planned for in the course of the financial year. Honorable Speaker, the other aspect of the matter is that there are no systems in most of the county governments. There are no foolproof management systems that are able to collect revenue, and you are able to ascertain at any given point how much has been collected by the respective county governments. These systems that they have, Honorable Speaker, normally charge on a percentage basis, and in some instances, the amount that goes to the owner of the system is much more than what goes into the coffers of our county governments. And then at the end of the day, we still have projects that have not been completed because of lack of finances. Honorable Speaker, the issue also of the on-source revenue is the next frontier in which county governments should be encouraged to invest in so that they are able to meet the shortfalls that they expect from the equitable share. Honorable Speaker, yesterday we concluded the mediation on the Division of Revenue bill, and the negotiations were so intense that we ended up settling for 400.1 billion shillings for the financial year 2024-2025. Although our expectation was 415.5 billion, so that counties can be able to meet the non-discretionary budgeted expenses that have come as a result of the passing of the several bills by Parliament. So, Honorable Speaker, counties should be encouraged to invest and maintain stronger supervision in terms of the on-source revenue, because that's the next frontier where they are likely to get money to develop their respective counties. Honorable Speaker, the second aspect of the amendment is with regard to the reporting to the county assemblies. Honorable Speaker, most of the assemblies are in the dark as to how much is being collected. Yeah, the other day, we had a county assembly of Machakos, which appeared before the Senate Finance Committee on issues to do with enhancement of their ceilings in terms of recurrent expenditure. Honorable Speaker, the county government of Machakos had put a budget of 4 billion for the on-source revenue, and by December last year, they had only collected 1 billion for the financial year 2023-2024. So you can see the disparities, Honorable Speaker, of the projections and in reality what they are raising in terms of the on-source revenue by this county. The actual reporting to the county governments and the Senate will provide the oversight committees, Honorable Speaker, with the tools for which they can be able to monitor and take corrective measures as the year progresses in terms of this amendment. Honorable Speaker, I support this amendment, and I second the amendment to the PFM Act as proposed by Senator Hamida. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senators, I now propose the question that the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 40 of 2023, be now read a second time. Honorable members, I will now call upon those members who've requested to speak to this bill, and I'll start with Senator Samson Cherargei.
Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate Senator Amida Kibwana, especially elect. I think she has been doing tremendous work, especially in legislative business. I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, these are issues we have been grappling as the Senate Public Accounts Committee. As the Vice Chairperson of Senate Public Committee, one of the audit queries that we have always considered has been on the issue of on-source revenue and also the running of the county treasury, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, the amendment of Public Finance Management Act is to make sure and put in place necessary mechanisms for accountability purposes and to ensure revenue collection, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, normally in our brief as members of the public accounts and Senate, we normally ask revenue potential of each and every county. Mr. Speaker, you find there is no county, and I want to dare, because I have sat in the public house, that has ever met revenue system. I remember today there was a county that we were meeting, the neighboring county of Laikipia, and they had missed their own revenue target by over 411 million, apart from the revenue they had set, which is not realistic. But when you look at, for example, Nandi, according to CRA, we have a potential target of 630 million. But Nandi has never gone beyond 300 to 400 million. So it means most of the counties are missing their own source revenue target by a half of what they target, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, borrowing the best practices from the National Treasury. And you know, by the way, this in any way does not undermine devolution. I know the people who imagine and think that when the Senator Amida proposes that they should, in consultation with National Treasury, many people want to imagine that we are undermining devolution. We are not. We are complementing, because they are mutual and distinct, and complementarity, borrowing what we call best practices, Mr. Speaker. And I know this consultation word was famous during Grand Coalition government, and I think it had an extent of even the Constitution being amended then, during the Grand Coalition arrangement between former President Mwai Kibaki and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. So what we are saying is consultation. It does not mean that you are loading over another entity, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, and then there is a challenge in revenue collection. You find, like, for example, Nandi County, you find they produce a number of triplicate receipts. But the receipt they surrender to the county treasury is only one receipt. So where is the other two receipts? That is how they are stealing money, Mr. Speaker. You find the serial numbers of receipts they issue to border sticker. For example, in Nandi, border pay beyond 300 shillings per sticker. Mr. Speaker, the ones of single permit, the one on land rates, rents, fees, Mr. Speaker, daily receipts of parking receipts, Mr. Speaker. It always becomes a challenge, because sometimes our counties or some crooked county government officials take advantage and steal. Is the issue different receipts, same receipts, but different serial number? I remember in some occasion, Mr. Speaker, there was a time every evening when Nandi used to bank their money at Kenya Commercial Bank in Kapsabet, they used to lose over 96,000 every evening. So there is a lot of leakages. There is a lot of, and you know, they have set up cess points. Mr. Speaker, I don't understand why would I pay, Mr. Speaker, cess from Nairobi when I'm taking stones here, building stones from Thika, I pay, when I enter to Nairobi, I pay cess. As I enter to Nakuru, I pay cess. As I enter to Uasin Gishu, I pay cess. As I enter to Nandi, I pay cess. Mr. Speaker, I think we are encouraging double taxation by counties. Why don't I pay cess from the origin of the product or at the end of the delivery project? Because you are overcharging. Because you will end up paying cess points. But this money, Mr. Speaker, that counties collect do not have value, Mr. Speaker. We have never seen value. For example, when you go to Kapsabet County market, and I know Senator Otsosi knows this, the county askaris and county revenue officers will enforce with fire and fury. But when you go to Kapsabet town market, you will get there is no toilets, there is no clean water, there is no electricity, no one is collecting dirt at our Mama Mboga who are at Kapsabet town market. But when it comes to collecting receipts, you will see governors sending their askaris, sending their revenue officers, Mr. Speaker, and that money at the end of the day ends to the county treasury. Mr. Speaker, and that is, there is no value. You go to Kaptumo, you go to Mosoriat, you go to Kabiet, you go to Maraba, you go to Kobucha. Women are selling, even in Mosoriat, where I come from, women are selling along the road in an open market. When it rains, they can't sell. When it is dust, they can't sell. But counties will be quick to go and collect the revenue. You go to Chepteri Center, Mr. Speaker, and other centers across Nandi, county will go for motorbike stickers. For example, in Chemase, they don't have what we call a shed, border shed, but the county of Nandi will go ahead and collect stickers or demand that, for example, the motorbike space, for example, in Soba, for example, Rikibokat, Mr. Speaker, Center, or somewhere in Mombwa, Mr. Speaker, or Chepterwa. Yet there is no, the shed that has been given the standard that demands that, because, Mr. Speaker, the former president, Mwai Kibaki, used to tell us, kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea. And that has been the essence that, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, I don't know whether the mover noted Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether the mover noted that we did pass a law, Facilities Improvement Act 2023, where we allowed, through cost sharing aspect, if we are collecting money in Kapsabet County Referral Hospital or any other hospital, or even here in Bakati Hospital, we have passed an act to allow you to spend money at source for ambulance services, for support services, which I think this act, I don't know, when the committee of the whole, we should be able to look at it, because there is a law that allows counties to spend at source. And more specifically, Mr. Speaker, on the aspect of cost sharing in our hospitals, Mr. Speaker, so that that one can be captured. The reason, the wisdom of passing Facilities Improvement Act to spend at source, because, for example, you go to an hospital like Kapsabet or Mosoriat or Chepterwai, Mr. Speaker, or Kabiet, you take somebody at night, Mr. Speaker, and you want to take your person to MTRH, a sick person, you are told there is no fuel. And our people in Nandi end up paying 1,000 to 2,000 shillings so that they can get an ambulance. The issue of drugs is not in the hospital, for example, and that is why when you go to Kapsabet, it is not a good business. But you find there are so many chemists. The reason there are many chemists in Kapsabet town is because there are no drugs in Kapsabet County Referral Hospital. If there were no drugs, it would have been easier, Mr. Speaker. So I think at the essence of this transparency that we are talking about is very critical, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, even the other day, Mr. Speaker, and this has been reported in Kapsabet police station, there was a lady who within the hospital of Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, there was an attempt rep within the hospital of Kapsabet Referral Hospital, Mr. Speaker. And I know Senator Amida, being a member of health committee, is aware that there is OB, where even patients are not safe. And you saw what happened in Garissa, because she sits in the health committee, Mr. Speaker. So you can see hospitals must be the place where our patients feel safe. Because if women can be sexually molested, allegations that were in Garissa County Referral Hospital, that we are seeing in many hospitals, including Kapsabet County Referral Hospital. And the sad reality, Mr. Speaker, is you find the management committee of county referral hospital go and sit and tell the complainant that drop the charges so that you don't taint the image of the hospital. I think that's an abuse to the dignity of women, Mr. Speaker, across the country. And therefore, when we talk about this Facilities Improvement Act, it is important that Senator Amida note this so that as you proceed with your amendment, Mr. Speaker. Finally, on the issue, because so that I finish with the other limp, is, Mr. Speaker, the county revenue system. Mr. Speaker, we used to have people like Jambo Pay, Safaricom. You know, we were asking, Mr. Speaker, you remember during, and I know you have been practicing in this town, when NMS, no, Mr. Speaker, Speaker has been a senior practitioner in this Nairobi city. Why is the retired Jai referring that you have been practicing in Eldoret? I think he needs some information. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, what I wanted to say, in the last session, during NMS, you are aware that the revenue collection was partnership with KRA. Their organizations are Jambo Pay. Jambo Pay, there was Safaricom. No one is telling us. Counties are hiring revenue systems. And I know the chairperson of Special Public Investment Committee will tell us later in his contribution. No one knows how much is being paid through agency fee. If Safaricom is collecting, if Jambo Pay is collecting, Mr. Speaker, if KRA is collecting, we need transparency and we need value for money, Mr. Speaker. Because we were seeing even in a county, I don't know which county was it Kuala or Kilifi, where the agency fee was more than half of what they are collecting. And I don't think it is fair, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the county treasury, even as we do the system, it must be simple, transparent, and verifiable. And Mr. Speaker, the best practice we can borrow is from KRA. I know to some of us, KRA is not a good name to listen to, but it is the one that collects our revenue on behalf of all of us. And therefore, we should start, and I want to say, even as we outsource the system, we must request counties to do automatic revenue system. Even in your county, Bomet County, for example, Mr. Speaker, must be told if they are using automated revenue system and how much agency fee are you paying, Mr. Speaker. And that is why most counties are going for the, I think they are using a principle that you shoot at the sun and land on the moon. For example, Nandi, according to CRA, I'm trying to recall the Bomet revenue potential. For example, Nandi, CRA revenue potential that we should collect per year is 630 million. But normally we are not going beyond 300 million. It means there is a lot of leakages, there is a lot of corruption, there is a lot of ineffectiveness. Mr. Speaker, sometimes you are told the systems are down when you want to pay for any of these on-source revenue, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this finally, in number 3 point, Mr. Speaker, is the county secretary shall submit copies of the quarterly statement and report to the Senate and the National Treasury. I think this will allow transparency and accountability so that we know when Jambo Pay, for example, is collecting for Meru County, how much are they collecting and how much agency fees are they taking? If, for example, Safaricom is collecting on behalf of Makueni County, how much are they charging, how much are they raising, and how much is the agency fee, and what is the contractual obligation? That is what we really want to see. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, when you submit these reports to county assemblies, because county assemblies are the primary oversight, Mr. Speaker, they are supposed to do the primary oversight. They are supposed to be part of the oversight to ensure the collection revenue system is up to par, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I agree with this statement that we must submit to the Senate and National Assembly, not National Treasury, and to the Senate and the National Treasury, Mr. Speaker, and also to County Assembly. I know some people, when they listen to National Treasury, will say that we are undermining the devolution. We are just borrowing best practices. But I don't see the need, on another flip side, Senator Amida, as you consult, I know the minority leader was airborne the other week. Maybe he's telling you the fairy stories of the sojourn and the journey across the world. But Mr. Speaker, I would be requesting that, why should you submit to National Treasury? We just submit to County Assembly and the Senate. Because if we submit, those are enough so that we don't see that national government is overreaching the functions of devolution, Mr. Speaker. And finally, the county assemblies, we must build the capacity of county assembly. Mr. Speaker, my only concern, and you know I'm the biggest supporter of MCS, even as we give these powers to members of county assembly, can they stop being rubber stamp of governors? Because sometimes we give them powers, you go to a function, an MCS stands and becomes a public relations officer of a governor. I saw that one in Vihiga County. Our MCA who is supposed to be doing oversight is the one explaining governor's project more than the governor, Mr. Speaker. And it is, I always get surprised. I was in that county and I was like, what is happening? MCAs are supposed to do the oversight. We are pushing for Ward Development Fund, Mr. Speaker, for MCAs, which this House and the President and all of us have agreed. They should get Ward Development Fund. Mr. Speaker, we are amending the PMF Act to give them financial autonomy so that they don't wait for CCM Finance to give them resources. We are supporting financial autonomy of MCAs. Number 3, we are pushing SRC, Mr. Speaker, to review the remuneration and salaries of MCAs so that they are not reduced to overglorified beggars, because we know MCAs are the last line of defense. And I have told Secretary General Karanja of Association AMCA, Association of MCAs in this country, Mr. Speaker. And I am telling AMCA to bring a legislative proposal so that we amend the law and give AMCA a legal impetus, Mr. Speaker. Just like SOCAT, just like CUG, just like a CAF, County Assemblies Forum of the Speakers, Mr. Speaker. So even as we push the interest of MCAs, to whoever much is given, much is needed. So as we say MCAs to be given Ward Development Fund, be given financial autonomy, be given better salaries and remuneration and allowances and all the support through SRC and government, Mr. Speaker, we also request of them to do their work without fear or favor from anybody, without fearing the governor, without fearing anybody, because that is their work, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in fact, when I went to Vihiga, I realized the MCAs, let me not go through that story, Mr. Speaker, because I was horrified. I could not sleep, because I thought the roles have changed there. In fact, it's the governor who is explaining the role of MCAs, and the MCAs is explaining the role of governors more than... Mr. Speaker, finally on transferred function, I think we have agreed on this. Functions, cost must follow functions. For example, health. Under the 4th schedule, the issue of standards, Mr. Speaker, belongs to the national government. But did you see the other day when there was crisis of labor within the health sector? The COG went into hiding. They disappeared. Yet when we are discussing about resources, they say, you know, health is devolved. But when there are labor crises in health sector, there is no national government can you handle. So they must have, Mr. Speaker, they must tell us the truth. If health is devolved, why are people missing drugs in hospital? Why are there labor crises? Mr. Speaker, interns issue was resolved. Laboratory technicians are still on strike, negotiation. They are yet to be given recognition. Clinicals were on strike, Mr. Speaker. But when you get Council of Governors, they say health is devolution. But when you tell them, can you address crisis in health? They say national government is the one to address, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, on this transferred function, we request, and the President has shown goodwill, and I know the PS in charge of devolution has signed those transferred functions. But what we are saying, and I've heard Fununu, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy Senator Ed is here. When we selected the committee to go and negotiate in mediation, the House was that 415 billion was our last baseline. I'm surprised to see in social media and sections of media that they have agreed to 41 billion, Mr. Speaker. They have betrayed our trust as a House. And we are waiting for that report when it comes there. Because we had agreed that 415 billion should go to counties. Our mediation team and went and renegotiated downwards. Then we should have agreed with the National Assembly. There was no need. I know they can argue that they added 8 billion, but 8 billion is a small drop in an ocean of problems that we are facing in counties. How can we talk about costing of transfer of functions when they don't have resources? When I question my governor about performance, I am aware they have given enough resources, Mr. Speaker. So the mediation committee from Senate must give us a proper explanation as the House, why they came down from 415 to 41 billion. And I remember Senator Muma was excited about the names that you were proposing. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go beyond there, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank you. I saw you over the weekend supporting one of young writers. Mr. Speaker, can you add me 30 seconds?
Senator Cherargei, your time is up.
I just wanted to say I support.
Close in 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support, Mr. Speaker, and say that this amendment is one of the best. Let us improve on it, and I wish Senator Amida Kibwana all the best.
Senator Okech Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I didn't want to respond to Senator Cherargei's allegation of members of the mediation committee because I knew I was coming after him and I didn't want him to enjoy any standing orders time because I think that it's important that Senator Cherargei understands that the senators who are sent into the mediation committee, most of them are actually experts in finance and experts in matters mediation as well, where we did a give and take situation. And Senator Cherargei must also take time to also read some of the conversations that go in between these two houses. For instance, Mr. Speaker, Senator Cherargei must understand that when the mediation committee did go to talk about the money that wanted to be added to counties, number one, both the COG and the National Assembly was stuck in a figure of 391. That meant that in this financial year, the counties could only have been added about 6 billion, Mr. Speaker. And that was a hard figure that we could not be able, that people were not able to move. But the team from the Senate, where a member like me, Senator Eddie Okech, sits, were able to go and argue for 400 billion, which actually increased 9 billion above what the National Assembly had put. And Senator Cherargei must also know that of the 30 billion that we were proposing as a Senate, which we passed in this House as a Senate, four of those items were non-discretionary items, meaning they were items that are fixed, that you cannot be able to move in any way. But the bigger chunk of the 30 billion that we are proposing...
I want to draw your attention to the provisions of Standing Order number 99 on anticipating debate. The direction you are headed to is with regards to what that mediation committee is yet to table tomorrow. Please stick your arguments and your contribution to supporting the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 40 of 2023, within the relevance of it.
Chair, I wish you could have said that to the senator, because if you allow Senator Cherargei to throw aspersions on a wonderful mediation committee and use that entire time, Chair, I'm just responding, and then he gets away with it, and then when I'm trying to frame
Senator Eddie,
my conversation within the same context.
Senator Eddie, okay. Kindly confine your comments.
Chair, I get that, but I think it's unfair. It's really unfair to allow an honorable member to throw aspersions to a serious committee that did a good work to give counties money and get away with it. And when I'm trying to counter that, I'm confined to that. I think that is stifling debate. No, I don't have a problem with the ruling, Chair, but I think that is extremely...
Proceed and...
Chair, do you want me to debate or do you want me to go and sit down?
Proceed, Senator Eddie.
Because you're not going to teach me how to debate, Chair. That is not being
Senator
fair.
Eddie.
Because...
Senator Eddie, kindly resume. Take your seat.
You can't allow...
You're out of order. Senator Eddie, you're out of order. Senator Mungatana Danson Buya.
Bwana Spika, ningependa kuchukua nafasi hii kushukuru kwa kunipa nafasi na mimi nitoe maoni yangu kuhusu sheria hii ambayo tunaijadili mchana huu. Bwana Spika, sheria hii haswa inaongea namna ya vile magatuzi yetu yanaweza kuongeza pesa ambazo wanazichukua kutoka kwa sehemu zao za magatuzi. Bwana Spika, hapa tumesema katika hii sheria, na ni maoni hata ya kamati ya fedha, ya kwamba tubadilishe sheria ambayo iko, tuifanye iwe nzuri zaidi kwa kusema kwamba kila gatuzi la Kenya liwe na system ama namna ya kuchukua hela bila kutumia wanadamu, ama a computerized system kwa lugha ya Kimombo. Bwana Spika, kila wakati ambapo wafanyikazi wa sheria wa serikali, iwe ni kwa county, iwe ni kwa serikali kuu, wakiitishwa kwamba tunabadilisha mambo iende kutoka kwa mfumo wa kuchukua hela kupitia mwanadamu iende kupitia mashini ambazo hazijui mwanadamu, watu huwa wanapinga sana. Na wanapinga kwa sababu zao, Bwana Spika. Wanapinga kwa sababu wanajua ya kwamba wakati ambapo unaondoa mwanadamu katika ile hali ya kuchukua hela ama kuchukua kodi ama kuchukua hela zozote za kiserikali, vile inavyofanyika ni kwamba shimo la kuchukua rushwa linakatwa ama linazibwa. So watu wengi ambao wamo serikalini ama wako kwa nafasi za serikali kubwa ama ndogo, ambao wako katika sehemu ya kuchukua hela, ikifika mahali ya kwamba tunataka kubadilisha namna ya kuchukua hizi pesa kutoka kwa wananchi, namna ya kuchukua hii pesa iwe badala ya kutumia mwanadamu kuandika risiti, tunataka hii iende kupitia kompyuta, watu huwa hawapendi. Lakini Bwana Spika, sasa tunataka kuipitisha hii sheria. Hapa kwa Senate tumeona shida kubwa sana. Bwana Spika, ukiangalia kama gatuzi letu la Tana River, mpaka leo Bwana Spika, hawajaweka an automated system ya kuchukua pesa za kodi ya wananchi ambao inaenda kufanya kazi ya serikali ya gatuzi. Bwana Spika, hawa ambao wanafanya katika gatuzi letu, Bwana Spika, wanakataa kabisa, na sababu moja ambao wanatumia, wanasema ati an automated system inakuwa bei ghali sana. Lakini Bwana Spika, ukiangalia pesa ambazo zinafujwa, pesa ambazo zinaibwa kupitia hii namna ya kuchukua pesa bila kutumia mashine, Bwana Spika, ni pesa nyingi sana katika kaunti ya Tana River. Kaunti ya Tana River, Bwana Spika, leo hii ukitaka kulipa ada yoyote ya serikali ya kaunti, unaambiwa either utoe pesa cash, uandikiwe receipt, ama unaambiwa peleka hii pesa kwa akaunti ya benki, ama unapewa pay bill. Bwana Spika, sasa shida ni kwamba pay bill ambao unapewa hii kufanya hapa kwa mfano Tana North sub county, ukifika ni pengine unalipa kwa adili ya kulipia soko. Pay bill ambao utapewa ikiwa ni Tana River sub county inakuwa ni tofauti. Pay bill ambao unapewa kwa Tana Delta sub county inakuwa ni tofauti. Pesa zote hizo zikiwekwa kwa hizo pay bill, Bwana Spika, tena zinachukuliwa na mwanadamu ambayo inatakikana iwe ni director wa county revenue. Na Bwana Spika, angalia hivi inavyofanyika kule Tana River. Several ama namba kadha wa kadha zinatumika kwa pay bill. Alafu hizo namba zinaenda kuchukuliwa sasa, ikifika mahali sasa hizo namba zikiwa zimefika kiwango fulani, zinakuwa controlled na mtu anaitwa director wa revenue katika kaunti yetu. Ati sasa yeye mwanadamu ndio anachukua hiyo pesa, anaipeleka kwa account, ile akaunti ambayo tunaita County Revenue Fund. Sasa hapa katikati ya kulipwa kwa zile pesa kwa pay bill, alafu mwanadamu kuzitoa zile pesa aziweke kwa account, Bwana Spika, kuna shimo kubwa hapa ambalo pesa za wananchi wa Tana River zinafujwa. Na Bwana Spika, hakuna namna ambayo zile hela ambazo zimelipwa na zile risiti zilizoandikwa ati zinaangaliwa, kukaguliwa kwamba hii ilikuwa ni sawasawa na zile pesa ambazo zimewekwa kwa akaunti. Hili shimo, Bwana Spika, limefanya watu ambao wanafanya idara ya revenue collection katika kaunti ya Tana River kuwa matajiri, Bwana Spika, na haieleweki. Mtu ni tajiri, hana kampuni, hana shamba, hana factory, lakini amejenga manyumba, na wanahepa kujenga manyumba kule Tana River. Wanakuja Malindi, wanajenga Malindi, wanakuja Mombasa, wanajenga Mombasa, wanajificha Nairobi, wanajenga Nairobi. Bwana Spika, hii sheria ambayo tunataka kuipitisha katika bunge hili la Senate leo, tunataka kuficha wizi ambao unafanyika katika kaunti zetu. Na si Tana River peke yake, Bwana Spika. Watu wengi sana wanajua ya kwamba watu wanaandikishwa risiti, lakini hizo risiti, pesa unayolipa haifiki kwa County Revenue Fund. Watu kama kwetu wanapewa pay bill, na hiyo pay bill hailinganishwi, hujui pale kije kitoka itaingia kwa account vile ulivyolipa ama la. Wewe umelipa na story yako inaisha hapo. Bwana Spika, wizi wa mabavu unafanyika katika kaunti ya Tana River, na ni watu ambao wanatumia hizi systems, wanazitumia na wanaiba usiku na mchana. Bwana Spika, katika kaunti ya Tana River, governor alieta kitu inaitwa Inuka Fund, na hiyo Inuka Fund ilikuwa ni pesa ambayo wananchi wanaenda kuomba ili wajiinue kibiashara. Alafu shida ikatokea kwamba kuregesha zile pesa, wananchi ambao wameomba zile pesa za deni, wengi wao hawaregeshi. Alafu kuna mtu ambaye ameanza sasa kusema tuwapatie pay bill numbers iwe sawasawa na ile wanafanya huku kwa County Revenue Fund. Wanataka tena kuintroduce system ile ya kwamba ati wewe lipa kwa hii pay bill alafu utakuwa ushalipa, lakini hiyo pay bill haiendi kwa account ya County Revenue Fund, haiendi kwa account ya Inuka Fund. Na Bwana Spika, vile wanataka kufanya tena kwa hii account ya Inuka Fund ni wizi tu wa kimabavu. Na Bwana Spika, sio system ambayo inatumika kwa kaunti ya Tana River peke yake. Kaunti ya Tana River, Bwana Spika, nimekwisha kuelezea, wananchi wanatoa pesa, wananchi wanapeleka pesa yao kwa hizi pay bill numbers, na wananchi wanaibiwa hizi pesa kwa sababu hizi pesa hazifiki kwa bank account, hazifiki kwa main County Revenue Fund. Na Bwana Spika, mpaka leo ukiangalia zile pesa ambazo Tana River County inaandikishwa kuwa ati wamecollect ama wameweza kuchukua kutoka kwa wananchi, ile ambayo tunaita hapa kwa Senate on source revenue fund, wananchi wa Tana River pesa yenu sio ile ambao wanatoka. Kawaida tunawekwa ni kama namba ya chini ama wapili wa mwisho, lakini wananchi wanatoa pesa. Watu wakifanya biashara ya ng'ombe wanatoa pesa, Watu wakiuza madukani wanatoa pesa. Watu wanakata maleseni ya mwaka wakifanya biashara zao Tana River. Lakini hizi fedha hazifiki kwa ile County Revenue Fund, kwa sababu hapa katikati kuna mashimo na kuna wizi ambao unafanyika. Na Bwana Spika, kila saa watu wanasema ati tukitafuta machine ama automated system ati hiyo ni ghali. Lakini ukiangalia zile pesa ambazo zimeibiwa tangu kaunti ya Tana River ianze paka leo, hata afadhali tutumie mamilioni lakini tununue system. Lakini hawataki kufanya. Hii ukiangalia magavana ambao wamekuwa hapo, hakuna hata mmoja ameisukuma hii system. Na swali tunataka kuuliza ni kwa nini hawataki kufanya automated system ya revenue collection? Ni kwa sababu Bwana Spika, hapa katikati kuna mashimo, na haya mashimo wanajua ya kwamba hizi hela zinafaidi watu na hazifaidi watu wa Tana River, zinafaidi maofisa hapo. Ndio maana watu wengi sana wanapigania, wanataka kuwa revenue collection officers. Wanataka hiyo kazi. Ni sawasawa na watu ambao wanapigania, mimi nataka kuwa polisi wa traffic kwa mfano, Bwana Spika. Ni kwa sababu kuna kitu ambacho watu wanafanya, na mpaka leo Bwana Spika, hilo shimo halijafungwa. Kwa sababu Bwana Spika, kila county hapa Kenya imewachiwa kufanya wenyewe vile watatafuta namna ya kuchukua hela za kodi kwa county. Ukija Nairobi wako na system yao, Mombasa wako na system zao, ukienda county zingine wako na system zao. County kama yetu hawana system haswa. Ni vile vile ambavyo babu zetu walikuwa wanachukua Tana River County Council, ndio vile walikuwa wanaandika marisiti ya uongo, ndio system ambayo inatumika sahi. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, kuleta hii sheria ambayo imeletwa leo tuijadili, inaleta usawazishaji ya kwamba kaunti zote za Kenya sasa zitakuwa zinatakikana, sheria hii ikipita, kaunti zote hata hiyo Tana River wanatakikana sasa, tukipitisha hii sheria ya kwamba watatumia automated system za revenue collection, ili kila pesa ambayo tunaichukua kwa ajili ya kufanya kazi ya wananchi, hiyo pesa inaenda kwa ile County Revenue Fund, ambayo kwa sasa Bwana Spika haiko. Kwa hivyo mimi nasimama hapa kusema kwa niaba ya wananchi na watu wa Tana River ya kwamba tunataka sana hii sheria tuipitishe, kwa sababu hii sheria ndio italeta uwazi. Tutawajua wale waizi ni akina nani. Na Bwana Spika, mimi nakwambia leo hii tukiipitisha hii sheria, kuna watu hata wataresign kazi kule Tana River, kwa sababu wamekuwa wakiiba pesa kupitia hii system ambayo haifanyi kazi, system ya zamani, system ambayo haiko automated, system ambayo haina computer, ndio ambayo wamekuwa wakiishia Bwana Spika. Na ni aibu Bwana Spika ya kwamba wewe unafanya kazi, uko na mshahara, lakini zile kidogo ambazo zinatoka kwa wananchi unazikula na wananchi wanakosa maendeleo. Tana River inaandikwa kwamba ndio ya pili ya mwisho ama ya tatu ya mwisho kwa kuchukua on source revenue Bwana Spika, na ilhali wananchi wanalipa. Kwa hivyo hii sheria Bwana Spika, tunataka watu wote, masenators wote, tuipitishe tena haraka sana, ili hawa magavana ambao hawataki kufanya haki kwa wananchi, magavana ambao wanataka kuficha siri za pesa ambazo wanazichukua kutoka kwa wananchi, hawa magavana Bwana Spika waanikwe kwa watu wao wote, kwa Wakenya wote. Bwana Spika, wizi mkubwa unaendelea na magavana wanajua Bwana Spika, na wanajua katika ile County Revenue Fund kuna pesa ambazo tungekuwa tunapata haziingii, kwa sababu wao hawataki kununua hizi system za automated system Bwana Spika. Na Bwana Spika, hii sheria tunapitisha leo inasema kwamba ripoti ya pesa ambazo zimechukuliwa ama zimekodiwa kutoka kwa wananchi lazima ziende kwa County Assembly. Gatuzi na bunge la gatuzi wanapata report ya zile pesa ambazo zimechukuliwa, na tena Senate tunapata report ya ile pesa ambayo imechukuliwa. Tena serikali kuu wanapata, Treasury wanapata report ya zile pesa ambazo zimechukuliwa. Bwana Spika, huu uwazi uwazi, Bwana Spika, ni jambo muhimu sana. Tukiwa na uwazi ndio wizi unapungua. Bwana Spika, maovu yote yanafanyika kukiingia giza. Giza ikiingia, Bwana Spika, mambo machafu yanafanyika, Bwana Spika. Lakini ukiweka taa katika giza, watu wanaogopa kufanya ule udhalimu, ule uchafu ambao wao wanafanya, hasa kwa upande wa fedha. Bwana Spika, ikiwa hawa magavana, ikiwa mawaziri wa kaunti watakuwa wanashurutishwa kupitia kwa hii sheria, kwanza waweke automated system. Pili, waweze kuambiwa kila baada ya mwezi wanaweka ripoti kwamba ni pesa ngapi wamechukua, wizi utapungua. Manake itabidi sasa, kama unataka kuiba, lazima uhusishe wote waliochaguliwa katika hiyo bunge ya county assembly. Na mimi najua kuna watu ambao wameingia katika county assembly na wako na roho ya kusaidia wananchi. Hawakuja pale kuiba na kujitajirisha wenyewe. Bwana Spika, mimi nasema hii ni sheria nzuri na tunataka tuipitishe, haswa kwa kaunti zetu ambazo zinaongozwa na watu ambao hawana moyo wa kusaidia wananchi, hawana roho ya kusaidia wananchi. Bwana Spika, mimi nakwambia sahihi, unasikia mtu anapeleka ng'ombe zake, anapeleka kwa market, pesa zinachukuliwa, lakini market kama ile market ya Bangale, Bwana Spika, ambayo ndio market kubwa ambayo inatoa pesa nyingi katika Tana River, hakuna hata choo ambacho kimejengwa hapo, Bwana Spika. Na watu wanachukua pesa kila siku ya soko ya Garseni, hakuna hata facilities ambazo zinasaidia mwananchi wa kawaida kufanya kazi zake. Na hizi pesa wananchi wanatoa. Mwisho wa mwaka unaandikwa pale Tana River ndio watatu ya mwisho, ya pili ya mwisho kwa kuchukua pesa ya on source revenue. Ni kwa sababu hakuna sheria ambayo inafaa. Hii ndio sheria ya kwanza ambayo tunajaribu kusawazisha kaunti zote. Ili Bwana Spika, wizi huu ambao unaendelea, utajiri huu wa udhalimu, Bwana Spika, ndio maana wengine wanakuwa wagonjwa. Unaona mtu ni tajiri lakini mara amesafiri, ameenda wapi, ni tajiri lakini na ametoka hata hizo nafasi walizokuwa nazo, lakini hakuna raha katika nyumba yake kwa sababu pesa ambazo amesomeshia watoto wake ni pesa za wizi. Watoto nao wanatoka wanakuwa waizi, wengine wanapigwa bunduki. Watoto wanatoka wanakuwa drug addict kwa sababu walisomeshwa na pesa za wizi. Hakuna baraka kwa hizo nyumba, Bwana Spika. Wao wenyewe wanakufa na magonjwa ambayo ni mabaya kwa sababu walikula pesa za wizi za Tana River, Bwana Spika. Na walikula pesa za wizi, wasomesha watoto wao na pesa za wizi, Bwana Spika. Pesa za udhalimu, Bwana Spika. Mimi nasema hii sheria itasaidia sana kaunti zetu na italeta uwazi katika matumizi ya pesa. Ikiwa kila mwezi kuna ripoti ambayo inawekwa kwa county assembly, watajua kama kuna pesa zinaibiwa. Ikiwa kila mwezi kuna ripoti inakuja hapa Senate, tutajua kwamba kuna pesa zinaibiwa ama zinatumika namna gani. Bwana Spika, mimi nimefurahi sana. Kama kuna sheria moja ambayo tumeipitisha kwa bunge la Senate ambayo litasaidia wananchi na watajua ukweli wa mambo ambayo yanaendelea kule nyumbani, Bwana Spika, hii ni kati ya zile sheria ambazo tunapitisha kwa sasa. Na Bwana Spika, tunataka kusema na kuchukua nafasi hii katika hii Senate kuambia wale jamaa ambao wanafikiria kwa sababu wako kwa kaunti ambazo ziko mbali kwamba watafanya vile watakavyofanya, kwamba watahongana kwa vitengo vya kiserikali ati wasishikwe, kwamba watafanya mbinu washike wale majamaa wawapatie contract. Nataka kuambia ya kwamba hii Senate tunawaangalia na macho mawili, na katika kizungu tunasema hakuna limitation, yani there is no limitation for criminal liability. Yani ikiwa wewe umeiba, umefanya makosa, hata ukitoka hizo nafasi zako ambazo umeshikilia sahihi, hata kama ni miaka 10, tukichukua ule ushahidi na tukikuweka pale, wewe utakuwa ni mzee na unataka kwenda retire, na tutakushika na tutakufunga wakati huo. Tunataka kuambia wafanyikazi wa serikali, sisi hatutaki tena miaka ile ya kusema pande ile tutafanya vile tutakavyofanya, alafu sisi tutaishi kama wakubwa kwa sababu ya pesa. Wewe kama unataka kufanya kazi ya kutafuta pesa, kwa nini usiende kufungua factory? Kwa nini usiende kufanya biashara? Kwa nini unaingia kwa serikali? Mimi nakumbuka wakati wa Barack Obama, mawaziri wengine walisema sisi hatutaki kuandikwa in your second term kwa sababu tunataka kwenda kufanya biashara tupate pesa. Kama unafanya kwa serikali, kaa kama mtu wa serikali.
Senator Mugatana, your time is up. Senator Osotsi Godfrey Atieno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this very important opportunity to also make my contribution on this bill, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 2023, sponsored by Senator Hamida Kibwana. And Mr. Speaker, I want to start by congratulating Senator Hamida for the excellent work she has done to bring this very, very important bill to this House. And Mr. Speaker, you know, Senator Hamida has demonstrated that she is a very committed and dedicated member of this Senate. Looking at the quality of the bills that she has brought in this House. Mr. Speaker, I remember Senator Hamida also sponsored a bill which was the Digital Health Bill, which came to the first reading. And at the point of the second reading, the government also brought their own bill, which was similar to her bill word by word. And this raises the issue, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, I would want you to listen to this. What is going to be done on the matter of plagiarism of bills, especially by the executive? When a private member sponsors a bill, and then it comes in here, it is processed in the usual manner, it goes to first reading, the second reading, the government side brings a similar bill, word by word. What is Senate supposed to do on this matter? Mr. Speaker, I think at some point, this is a discussion we will need to have, because us on this side of the minority, we felt really bad that a member can spend his time, can research, do a bill, and then the members of the executive come and plagiarize that bill and present to the same House, and we are not able to protect the member who has invested his time and resources in processing a bill. Instead, we go to the executive side. It really, really demoralizes that member, Mr. Speaker. To go to the substance of this bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill is long overdue because we have been trying to deal with the issue of management of on-source revenue in our counties. We have been trying to deal with the issue of automation of revenue systems in our county. And Mr. Speaker, one time in this House, I questioned why our county governments are not able to perform better in revenue collection, on-source revenue collection. Whereas in the old system, the defunct local authorities, they used to do better revenue-wise. They were able to collect enough money. And you know, that time, those local authorities were led by councillors, people who had low education, people who are just there in the villages. They did not have human resource like what we have in counties now. They did not have tools, but they were able to raise more money compared to the current scenario where we have counties which are better resourced, which have better tools, but they are collecting less money. They are not able to meet their targets. Where is the problem? I think this is a study that I want to encourage the Committee of Devolution to try and undertake and find out was it possible for the defunct local authorities to do better revenue performance than the current county government. Mr. Speaker, there is also the issue of counties not being able to meet their revenue targets. They do budgets. Most of them exaggerate their own source revenue targets, but they are not able to meet them. This is a serious problem. And this bill, Mr. Speaker, helps to a large extent to deal with this challenge of how to manage on-source revenue. So this bill is very timely, and I know discussions have been going on among stakeholders on how to deal with this problem. We have had the national policy to support enhancement of county on-source revenue that proposed that we have an integrated county revenue management system so that we can promote the revenue collection, transparency, accountability, and seal revenue leakages. But this discussion, Mr. Speaker, is a good discussion, but it has taken too long. So this bill is ahead of them by proposing that we have a legislation that will anchor their proposals into law. Mr. Speaker, we have also had a multi-agency task force on this issue of integrated county revenue management system so that we can have standardized revenue collection systems in our counties. Because what is happening, Mr. Speaker, is that we have diverse systems for revenue collection in different counties. And these systems, Mr. Speaker, talking as an IT expert, these systems are not type approved. We need to have a type approval process so that we have an entity that analyzes these systems and says that this system is suitable for revenue collection. Most of those systems don't meet the standards. The issue of agency fee that has been raised by Senator Cheregei, it is true. Some of them have very exorbitant agency fees. And the question is, that money, where does it go to? If you ask someone to pay money, and then you say 20% of that money is an agency fee, whom does it go to? These are questions. And that is another avenue of stealing from our counties. We know some of these systems are timed not to operate at particular times. So that at particular times when they think the revenue is very high, the system goes down, they go back to manual. That is when the stealing is taking place. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this process of having an integrated county revenue management system so that we can have a uniformity, so that even this House can audit that system. But if we have diverse systems, in fact, in some counties, we have multiple revenue collection systems. Not just one, it is multiple. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill by Senator Hamida helps us to standardize the systems that we have in our counties to ensure that there is transparency, efficiency, and verifiability of these systems, so that we ensure that we are able to deal with security issues like fraud-related issues. But, Mr. Speaker, even as we do this, I want to encourage that counties must run these systems distinctively from the national government. So the proposal on requiring that the counties shall, in consultation with the National Treasurer and KRA, decide, I think we need to relax that. I maybe say maybe, because we also don't want, as the people who are supposed to help in implementation of Article 96, to be seen to be making our counties subsidiary to the national government. So I think that part Senator Hamida, I would propose that we have an improvement on that. Secondly, county treasury is just an entity in counties. And this decision to come up with this system is a bigger decision that requires the input of the county executive. So we should not make it as a preserve of the county treasury. We need to say that county executive will be taking the lead in this. Because county treasurer is a junior member of the county. He reports to the chief officer, finance, and also CEC, finance. Those are people who are supposed to make substantive decisions regarding financial matters in the county. So we can't keep them off this. We need to amend that so that we give this power to the county executive. Mr. Speaker, the requirement that reports be presented to the Senate and to the county assembly is very timely. But I have a problem with presenting the reports to the National Treasury, because again, that also makes counties subsidiary to the national government. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the transfer of functions, funding, the costing of function, I think, Mr. Speaker, this is one of the areas that this Senate must take the lead. We have been taken in circles on this matter of transfer of functions. Even this current regime, the Kenya Kwanza regime, among the many promises they made to Kenyans, I remember one of the promises they made was that within 6 months of them coming to power, they will ensure 100% transfer of function. That has not happened, Mr. Speaker. We are now in the second year. That has not happened. There is no sign that that will happen. I remember last year, the IGRTC also said the same thing, that they are almost finalizing. They are 1 month away to transferring functions to the counties. Mr. Speaker, they have not done that. It's just talk, talk, and talk, and talk. I think this is a conversation that we must take the lead as a Senate and push it, because we have so many functions which are in the national government which should actually be in the county government. And we are not just talking about transfer of functions. This bill is now giving us the legal mandate to say that functions are, money must follow functions. We are not just transferring functions. And I want to ask governors to be very careful on how they engage the national government on the matter of functions. Because nowadays, the national government has now devised another way of controlling devolved function. They have now come up with what we call counterpart funding, where they say we are going to give you 50% and give us 50%. A good example, Mr. Speaker, is the funding for CHPs. They say we are going to give you 50%, give us 50%. CHPs in most counties have not been paid their stipend. In my own county, for the last 3 months, they have not been paid because of the delay in releasing the 50% counterpart funding by the national government. Mr. Speaker, we have also seen this issue of industrial park, where they said counterpart funding of 50%. Most of the money has not been taken to counties. The projects that were launched are still lying there. They are going to become white elephant. So we want to ask our governors to try and avoid getting into agreements with the national government on the pretext of counterpart funding. Funds must follow all the devolved function. Even liquor. I have heard the deputy president say that they want to take over liquor licensing in counties. I want to tell the deputy president, you have better things to do. Leave counties to run their function. Liquor is a county function. That is where some counties get their revenues. So if you say you want to take it over because you want to run it better, and yet the national government has functions which they are not running better, who is going to run for them those functions which they are not running better? Mr. Speaker, the issue of ECD, we have a lot of functions, ECD related, which are still being run in the Ministry of Education. All those functions should be taken to counties, and funds follow those functions. So that if we want to tell our counties to be run better, we want to tell them to be run better, but when we know they have more resources to run those functions. Mr. Speaker, this is a very timely bill, and with the little panel beating that I've indicated, this is a bill that we should all support and make it better, and I'm sure the National Assembly will also fast-track this bill so that we have a uniform, integrated county revenue management system, and probably this will help us deal with the problem of mismanagement of on-source revenue, which also affects budget control and performance. Mr. Speaker, the leading query, audit query in most counties is the issue of budget control and performance, because counties are not able to meet the set targets of on-source revenue, and therefore they end up having budgets which are not working, and that becomes a query. So in a way, this bill will help in dealing with accountability issues, budget issues in our county, and make our counties run better. Mr. Speaker, as I finish, I also want to say I am very disappointed. I know my friend Eddie was a bit emotional on this issue, but I also want to join my friend Cheregei to say I'm disappointed with the mediation committee. We all agreed, we passed a BPS here, we also made a decision, a majority decision, and agreed that we will stick with 415 billion shillings.
You are wading towards where Senator Eddy went. Do not anticipate that debate on that particular report. We are yet to receive it. We will receive it tomorrow. You will get an opportunity to castigate, if you want, the committee on mediation on what they've done. So do not anticipate that debate.
Well guided, Mr. Speaker. I was just saying that because, you know, we are talking about revenue, and there are two levels of revenue, the shareable revenue and the on-source revenue. So, and you know, the shareable revenue may also affect the on-source revenue, because county governments may want to invest in these systems, and they need money. So anyway, we will leave that debate for another day. Just to say, this is a wonderful bill, and I fully support it, and I want to encourage the members of this House to support it and fast-track it to become law with a few amendments that have been proposed by the Finance Committee, and they are going to be proposed by the members in this House. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Osotsi. Senator Muma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this bill. I rise to support the bill. Mr. Speaker, I have said here before that as we go into the 13th year after devolution, I think the Senate should work harder to strengthen the intergovernmental relations between the two levels of government in order for devolution to perform well. And most of the laws that we should bring should be laws that will strengthen that intergovernmental consultation and cooperation to ensure that the two levels of government recognize that they don't have separate citizens that they are serving, that they serve the same citizens, and therefore the 13 years of negative competition that has been there between the two levels needs now to tone down, and we need to get to a level where they assist us to move devolution as is envisaged in the Constitution of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, the issue that has been brought in this bill is absolutely important, and I support that we are at that level when we need to support or to put in place legal framework to ensure that county governments do better in terms of on-source revenue, collection, and accountability for those monies. Mr. Speaker, the proposed clause 160A speaks to principles that exist in the Constitution. The principle of transparency, efficiency, effectiveness, and a verifiable system, a system that is simple, a system that is secure, that should prevent any fraud or losses, and one, very important, that promotes the distinctiveness of the national government and the county government. Mr. Speaker, that is what any law that we are bringing in place that strengthens intergovernmental relations should enable us to do, to strengthen systems while delivering on devolution as provided for in the Constitution. So I would want to say that the principles that we are reaffirming in this bill are principles that already exist in the Constitution. And why are we reaffirming? Is because for the 13 years, those principles have not been properly implemented. And Mr. Speaker, not just at the county level, also at the national level. Mr. Speaker, you will recall just a few weeks back, we had the report from the Auditor General that is questioning a whopping 15.5 billion transacted through the e-citizen. So it's not as if national government and the e-citizen is necessarily foolproof. So what we are saying is this, that we need to put in place systems at the national government and at the county governments that will ensure Kenyans are not defrauded of their monies, that will ensure full accountability, whether it is national government or county government. So I wanted to disabuse the few comments made by those who believe automation means safety. Because as the Auditor General has demonstrated recently, the e-citizen collection system that we have has issues. In fact, it says the controls are weak, it has the potential to be compromised, and it is heavily reliant on vendors. And we have been told, as Senator Cherarkei said, we are allowing the so-called digitization and automation to be squarely in the hands of people who've decided to reap money from Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, if we are paying taxes just for 20% of that to be given to one businessman because they gave us a system, I think we've lost it. And we need to revisit those issues. So even as we are thinking an integrated system, good sounding word, we need to ask ourselves, integrated means what? And I will go back to those principles that are being put in this bill to say whether national government, whether county government, to what extent are we putting in place a system that will ensure every contribution by a citizen, whether in a market or whether to the national government, that that money will go where it is supposed to go, and that money will contribute to the service delivery of this nation. So I want us to be careful not to send the message that accountability is required at the counties, but there's no accountability required at the national government. So we need to move in that level. Mr. Speaker, as we do so, I also want to request, Senator Hamida, that you might want to relook at a few of those clauses. When you look at 191F, 191F is talking about funding that is relating to transferred function. And in 191F1, you suggest that where the national government has transferred a function to a county government pursuant to Article 187 of the Constitution, the Cabinet Secretary shall determine the cost of the transferred function. But in a similar clause in 191G4, you say that a national government entity to which a county government has been transferred shall be, no. There is a place where the function is being transferred by the county government to the national government. You suggest that the cost shall be determined by national government and the county government. Senator Hamida, I hope I can persuade you that to determine that cost takes the two. You cannot make it the business of only national government to decide. Because if national government were to decide we are transferring our security function momentarily at the village to county X, and we think it will cost so much, and it turns out to be only half the cost, you are going to cause an issue. So that decision of determining cost must be a consultative process that should involve both the national government and the county government. And you might want to do this through the relevant COG committee. So I would want to urge that you relook at that and see how to move that issue. Mr. Speaker, even as we are thinking through this, I believe if this law were to be passed as is, it does not necessarily bring a new accountability requirement that is not in the Constitution. We need to ask ourselves, why do we have governments, both national and county, that defy the Constitution, that defy the law? What other laws can we bring to complement this law that can support or can ensure that we achieve what we hope to achieve with this law? Mr. Speaker, I would therefore urge Senator Hamida, even as you do this law, you might want to speak to Senator Chute, who is trying to bring a bill to strengthen the role of controller of budget, so that we are able, beyond the controller of budget just clearing the appropriation or the requisition by county governments, we need to give the controller of budget the powers to be able to go further and find out, once those monies have been requisitioned, are they going to what they are supposed to? Today we sat in the Committee on Devolution, and one of the things we found out that has been discovered, that counties are requisitioning money on pending bills that are expected to go, they submit papers that indicate that this money is going to be paid to X, but in actual fact they are paying that money to Y. We were told how some counties have up to 300 commercial bank accounts that are illegal. So if we just put in general and use the generality of the principles of transparency, the principles of accountability, but do not visit the bits that actually facilitate fraud, we will not get far. So I would urge that Senator Hamida also finds a way in which we can complement the law that we are running, so that the laws of other oversight bodies like controller of budget are also strengthened to ensure that if we have a controller of budget with integrity like the one we have currently, we will be able to call out the counties that are actually pilfering money through other means. Mr. Speaker, I also think the National Treasury should also start being held accountable and responsible on the expenditure by national government. Mr. Speaker, we rarely get to know a report of how much national government in development is supposed to deploy to the different counties. And I have brought a question. I don't know whether the CS will come tomorrow, but the laws we make seem to keep the Treasury above reproach, as though the Treasury does not have accountability responsibilities. Whereas the Treasury works or keeps the monies for the nation, the Treasury is also a national government entity, and we need to hold them accountable for the budgets that go to the National Assembly, to the national government. So I believe even as we are strengthening the counties, it will help if we equally strengthen the national government so that we know our counties are the recipients of the development budgets of national government. So we have a responsibility as the Senate to also hold the National Treasury accountable on the budgets that national government receives on development for the nation. So I would be asking that as we are speaking accountability, let us not make it look as if the Treasury is good, the Treasury knows it all, and the Treasury is fine. So we need to strengthen both levels in order to deal with this issue. Mr. Speaker, I am happy that we will be requiring quarterly reports to come to the Senate so that every so often, and I suggest that those reports, every so often, the Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations should every so often report on how counties are performing on different issues in relation to revenue collection, revenue expenditure, revoting of monies not spent in a financial year, so that we are able to call out and the people of Kenya are able to know this is how my county is performing on this particular issue and they need to do better or they are doing well. So, Mr. Speaker, with those proposals, I support this law and acknowledge that, yes, we need to strengthen the laws relating to accountability to ensure that all goes well. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I was going to forget a very important issue. Senator Amida, I hope you could relook at this. In Article 191G4, you have provided that a national government entity to which a county government function has been transferred shall submit a quarterly report to the Senate and respective county assembly. Now, functions can only be given to national government or county government. They are not given to a national government entity. So it's only national government that can take responsibility for a function that it has taken. So I think you will need to revise that so that we don't give the impression that it is possible for a county government to transfer, for instance, a function to a parastatal. That is not provided for in our constitution. Functions belong to national government and county government. They don't belong to national government entities. So I would suggest you correct that so that it is about functions can only go to the governments, they don't go to government entities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Muma. Call upon Senator Paris Tobiko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I really don't know how to execute in my submissions in 4 minutes or so, Mr. Speaker. But let me say I support, Mr. Speaker, this bill.
Senator Tobiko, you do not have to conclude your submissions in 4 minutes. Your time is not 4 minutes. It's more than 4 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, but of course the time remaining is 4 minutes around there, Mr. Speaker. But thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to support this bill and congratulate Senator Amida for coming up with this very, very, timely bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the amendment to the Public Finance Management Bill
Amendment Bill 2023 is timely, Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, what ails our counties today, or the devolved units, Mr. Speaker, is the lack of systems, the lack of structures, Mr. Speaker, that work, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our counties are still grappling in the dark. A lot of them need a lot of capacity building, Mr. Speaker, and I think the issue of capacity building, Senator Amida, I don't know how you would be able to, include this in this bill, Mr. Speaker, because what is ailing our counties may not be the lack of the manpower or even the goodwill, but the necessary capacity, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, when she proposes that a revenue collection system is created, that Treasury will liaise with the National Treasury and the County Treasury so that there is a transparent system in place, an adequately secure system which is also simple to understand and verifiable. Mr. Speaker, I think this will go a long way to cure what ails our counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also reporting to the county assemblies is very good, Mr. Speaker, because the county assemblies are the people's representatives, and they are the first level of oversight, Mr. Speaker, before the report is submitted to the Senate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have met a lot of government agencies, including the IGRTC committee, and we have seen from, the transitional authority to IGRTC, they are still laboring to see how to get functions getting transferred from the national government to the county governments to get adequate resources, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have met in the Committee of Education. Counties are struggling to pay ECD teachers, Mr. Speaker. Counties are struggling, Mr. Speaker, to establish the ECD centers. And today, as we were discussing in the Committee of Education, Mr. Speaker, ECDE is not just the education part of it, it's also the development of the child, Mr. Speaker. And there is a proposal that in these ECD centers, Mr. Speaker, even immunization of the young ones can go on there, Mr. Speaker. And the counties need adequate resources for the devolved health functions, Mr. Speaker. Those immunization programs, Mr. Speaker, are required, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Tobiko, you will have 16 minutes when the House resumes to conclude on your support submissions to this particular bill. Honorable Senators, It's now 6:30 p.m. time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 29th of May, 2024 at 9:30 a.m.
and national administration in collaboration with the